On the table are pots of his favorite houseplants, and he reaches for a sprayer to water them. The hero lies in a hammock with a small pale cat asleep on him. He strokes the cat, imagining a quiet life. A drop of water trickles down the leaf. Waking in a dark office under the computer's glow, he realizes it was a dream and exhales tiredly, thinking he dreamed of that life. Glancing at the screen of his charging phone, which has his cat as the wallpaper, he says it's been 10 minutes, then goes back to work and clicks the mouse. Heading to the vending machine, he buys an energy drink. A man rides the train as an automated voice announces the last train, and on his third night in 3 days, he thinks he'll finally be home, thinking of his plants and that he must care for them first. A mechanical voice announces the line is almost over. A police officer approaches the hero and calls to him, and he keeps thinking about his flowers and how he must care for them. A man sits with his head down while a policeman keeps calling and trying to wake him. The hero's mind shifts to the office plants, and he thinks he should bring them some bait because they are not in good condition. He doesn't understand what all the noise is about. The hero asks in his mind for more time to rest so he can see the dream again. The policeman starts to panic and loudly begs him to wake up. A man opens his eyes. A wooden cart holds him. He sits wearing a raincoat. A bag rests on the bench beside him. He realizes he had been asleep and thinks he hasn't dreamed of the old days in a long time. A girl driving an ox cart along the riverbank calls the hero and asks him to wake up. He leans out the window and asks what is wrong. The hero is Lit Rykart, 19 years old. The freckled girl who drives the coach apologizes for waking him and points ahead, asking him to look. The heroes step out of the carriage. A giant fallen tree blocks their way, its branches lying in the river and its massive trunk sprawled across the road. The girl says she doesn't know what to do next, because there is water on the right and a cliff on the left. Lit finds the tree enormous. A tired sigh escapes the girl. She says they have no choice but to turn back and take a detour, so they will arrive 5 days late. The hero is not upset and thinks it's not a bad idea, enjoying the unusual event on the journey. Turning to the cart, she says they have a problem because they're carrying a package from the imperial capital that she must deliver the day after tomorrow. Upset and close to tears, she says the delay fine was deducted from her fee and that a quota still remains. The hero first looks at her, then turns around. Telling them it's time to go, she pets the bull. The girl notices the man has moved away and asks him about it. Approaching the tree, he asks them to move back because it is not safe there. He presses his hand against the tree trunk and uses an unknown force to make it move. Someone lifts the tree out of the ground and something happens to it. New shoots and branches sprout from and around the tree. The hero thinks his past life ended on the train, that he probably died of exhaustion and was reborn into this peaceful world. He turned 16. At this age, he became a hero. The tree becomes a tangled knot of branches. The girl looks at it and raises her hands in shock. Many huge branches are tangled together and wrapped around the tree, lifting it above the ground. The entire mass of branches plunges into the river with a huge splash, and waves rise all around. Sheltered under a large leaf from the drops, the hero stands with the girl and says the problem is solved while she is amazed by what she sees. Screaming with delight, she asks what kind of magic it is and guesses it is telekinesis or wind magic. She admits sheepishly that it's a trade secret and asks them not to tell anyone, then pleads to be allowed to brag, but he refuses outright. Let's suggest they leave quickly. The girl smiles brightly, agrees, and thanks him. They keep driving past mountains, fields, and farms. The boy looks out the window, smiling as he thinks it was the plant magic that sped growth and restored life. He simply repeated those effects on the big tree, steering them in a different direction. Lit believes plant mages are rare and that he is the only one among the wizards he knows, so he keeps a low profile. He remembers being reborn into a peaceful world. As promised, he became a masked hero, and the 100-year war with the demons ended. With his plant magic, he defeated the demons, restored peace, and saved harmony. His personal world has not changed at all, and is the same as before reincarnation. He remembers standing in court in shackles while people pointed at him. 3 years after the event, they are now on a 10-day cattle drive from the capital. Lit closes his eyes and imagines himself as a relaxed aristocrat from the Hain period. An ox cart would suit him better, but he enjoys this slow, easy pace. The freckled girl asks about his work and assumes he is an elite magician. Lit says calmly that he is currently unemployed, and she, surprised, asks if he quit his job and went to the village. He says he quit, or rather that he was fired and left everything. She asks again. Holding the bottle, he says he has ambitions he wants to achieve, and that he is no longer a hero, a saint, or a corporate citizen, and is finally free. This time he's determined to live his own life, and the girl tells him they're almost there. She says cheerfully that they will arrive at the guild union's only and largest city. Leaning out the window, he peers as the wind stirs his hair. The girl says there are over 100 guilds in the city with no ties to any country or people, and hopes he will find what he is looking for here. She calls the city a source of hope for many, and the hero wonders if he can succeed. They drive onto a bridge and tall buildings rise up ahead. She introduces him to Gauntland, the city known as the Land of the Free. Slamming the mug down on the table, the hero drinks half of it. Efoam's mouth waters as he thinks about how delicious it is. He says happily it's even better, because in the imperial capital where he lived until now, beer was kept at room temperature. In the imperial city, alcohol was banned until age 20, and he finds the other world surprisingly strict too. He tastes the food they brought him, dried meat, pickles, and cheese, and thinks it tastes the same. Lit mentally notes that the food in this world is not good because it is either too salty or bland. He notes the food here cannot be compared to modern Japan, where people eat abundantly, and that this is an alternative world of harmony. He remembers Harmony, the world he was reborn into 20 years ago. It is the largest of the world's 4 landmasses, an hourglass-shaped continent with a wide gap between north and south. He believes the Romance Empire rules the north of the continent. The Guild Union is an autonomous region governing the southern continent. Gauntland, the city he's in, is the only city on the southern continent controlled by the Guild Union and is also the largest city in the south. From the tavern window, he sees a cityscape unlike the imperial city. The buildings are beautiful, probably because they never endured war, and the flowering plants are clearly well cared for. Behind the counter, the woman asks the man if he liked the snacks. He dodges the question by saying the beer tastes great, and she accepts that happily. Looking at him, she says he's different from the others and asks if he's from the Empire, while he nervously asks if he really looks like an Imperial. Noting he is young and handsome, she looks at his coat and says it is very stylish. Turning to the other tables, she scans the humans and beastmen and notes that none of them are like him. The hostess asks how someone from the Reich ended up here, assumes he is on vacation, and he begins to answer. Lit says confidently that it is all about ambition. Laughing, the girl says it's youth, asks his name again, and leaves when called to another table. Still drinking his beer, he thinks he shouldn't have given her his real name, but notices she doesn't know who he is, even though she knows he's from the Empire. Since arriving, the hero has interviewed several people who all reacted the same and knew he was from the Imperial people, but none recognized his name, so they probably have not heard of him on the southern continent. He takes comfort in thinking that no news about him means no one there knows he's a hero. Lit thinks he came there to live alone, so he'll buy a patch of wasteland in the wilderness where he can study the plants and magic he loves. Once that's done, he'll fill the vacant lot with his favorite plants. He pictures himself lying on the grass and sees this as the life he will lead. Those are his ambitions. Let's pause and imagine his idea could come true there, because he is only a young man. Draining his glass, he figures he'll have to go out and buy some land and play hard, and slips his hand into his coat pocket. Taking out the flask with the seed, he looks at it, sure that this time he will achieve his goal and gain real freedom. At the Bureau of Land Management, a large building, he immediately refused to sell the land. Wearing glasses, the middle-aged elf apologizes sadly and says it's impossible. The hero stares at him, tense. A bag of money sits on the table between them. An elf says he wants to buy a hole in the middle of nowhere, and surprisingly, it costs a lot even though it's just wasteland. The man explains the price is in large gold coins used only for big transactions like buying land, so the hero is unfamiliar with them, and adds that one such coin is worth 100 gold coins. The hero realizes he must pay 10,000 gold coins for this plot. The elf says that even if this bag were full of gold coins, it still would not be enough. Let feels upset, convinced that even though he has saved a lot since becoming a hero, it is still not enough. The elf watches him. A man asks the boy if he belongs to the guild, and Lith refuses. The man says this is unfortunate. Joining a guild could let the hero get a loan or similar help, but the speaker says he would have to fulfill certain duties. The elf advises him to join the guild because there is nothing wrong with dreaming big, saying he can get on his feet there and make money. But someone interrupts and says they do not like the idea. Gloomily, he says he doesn't want to be tied down by anything under any circumstances. The elf warns that in that case the purchase will be impossible. Lit grabs the bag, tosses it into his pack, and says he'll go earn some money. He says he'll be back soon and asks to have the procedure ready on site. The man is sure he'll get what he wants. The elf tries to call him. An inspired Lit shouts that he will have backing by lunchtime, because if they do not hurry, someone might buy such a good piece of land. The elf tries to stop him and cannot see what the man could want in that land. A week's ride on slow horses with no one in sight and only wasteland, but he decides to wait. 2 hours remain until lunch. Lit runs down the steps. Lit walks down the street, surprised he hadn't realized how expensive buying land would be, and thinks independent people here can't even take on quests. After assessing the situation, he decides to start a plant-related business and considers a low-cost material he can buy. Let's remember the elf's words about the guild with sadness and feel a little lost. He notices an argument in an alley where 5 men are loudly demanding something from a short girl. He watches them, thinking the men might hurt or mock her. One of the men pushes the girl and she falls. The hero hates people who mock the weak and can't stand that anyone ignores it. People of all backgrounds pass the alley without offering help, only talking about the cruelty among themselves and moving on. One man says it's time to end this, but he notices someone whose hand drops a handful of pollen. Casting a rapid growth spell, vines surge from him toward the ill-wishers, wrapping them head to toe and holding them still while a flower blooms on one of the vines. Hood up, the boy walks past men wrapped completely in vines. They slowly pass out, and he tells them not to worry because it is just pollen. Lit knows he must leave quickly before the men see his face, because making a scene and becoming known would hurt his ambitions. Relieved she is not badly hurt, he watches the girl rise. The girl looks at her ill-wishers with a shudder. A blonde girl with cat ears drops to all fours and screams into the face of a defeated man that those who mock the weak will be punished by heaven itself. Startled by the girl's ears and tail, the hero quickly covers his face with his hand when she turns to look at him. Smiling, the girl steps closer, points at him, and asks if he is the one who saved her. With his face still covered by his hand, he denies any involvement and says he was distracted out of habit and had no time to run away. Listing that he's the only person here, she glares at him and the hero awkwardly turns away. Sensing a secret here, she whispers and asks him if he is an imperial enemy, and finally lowering his hand, he nervously asks if she knows who he is. She says no and lets out a sigh of relief. The girl says she'll find out now and introduces herself as Manhwa. Nervously, the hero resolves not to let anyone find out about him, because that could bring the same consequences as before. Already reaching for more pollen in his pocket, he thinks he should put her to sleep, but decides he doesn't have time for that. He admits he saved her life. Manhwa wags her tail and happily says she knew it. Litz asks her to thank him for saving her life, and she is embarrassed. He asks her to introduce him to people in need and to anyone who needs help or business. Nervously, he notes that this is gratitude, so there is no payment for it. Mon must squint sourly. Sadly, the girl says trust is very important in this industry. So as a gesture of gratitude, she will offer it as a special favor, and Lit is happy to hear this, but cannot understand why she looks so sad. In the end, he says he just needs a job. They head to a market full of small stalls and people milling about. A girl with lion-like ears and a tail stands beside one of them, calls out to customers, sees Litten Manhwa greet another girl, and waves back. Indignantly, she asks Manhwa whether the woman came to steal her donuts again. Then notices the man and asks if he is a customer, and Manhwa calls him her benefactor, which greatly surprises the girl. Mia introduces herself and says she is the best merchant in the Golden Road shopping district. He says it's nice to meet her, and that he heard she had some trouble, and she anxiously asks if he means the debt. Manhwa cuts in, saying he didn't mean it, and that she told him she was missing something. Mia rubs the back of her head in relief. The man wonders if everything is okay with the girl. Mia says there is a serious potion shortage in Gauntland right now, and the most powerful market potions, the high-level ones, are especially scarce and unavailable. Noting that a potion shortage in peacetime is odd, he asks why, She says it's likely caused by a lack of raw materials, and Manhwa then writes something in her notebook. The red berries used to make potions have been destroyed by sunlight and storms, she explains. They look at the slightly injured customers, and Mia says this explains why fighters from the mercenary guild and the secret guild got into trouble. The man looks and puts his hand in his pocket. Holding up the berrien, he asks whether it's hers. The girls agree, and Mia asks where he got it. He believes he has several samples with him, and if he needs more, his magic will increase them. Lif asks how much a high-level potion costs. Mia replies that they are not currently available. She suggests maybe 2 large gold coins. The man asks again, surprised. He remembers the elf saying these coins are for large transactions, and that each one equals 100 gold coins. Mia notes that when potions are cheap, they cost a silver coin or 2, and the man figures the price has risen 40-fold. Pleased by the information he received, he realizes this is a substantial increase. Lit asks Mia what would happen if she were able to sell red berries regularly, and they had a monopoly. Dreamily, the girl says this would be a win in the economic war, and she would be rich. The man runs off, calling for them to wait a moment and saying he'll be right back. They watch him go, surprised and unsure what's happening. Entering a dark alley, he makes sure no one is nearby and remembers that about 4 years ago, after the war ended, people believed monsters had stopped appearing, so there are no more high-level extermination quests. Burying the berry, the boy realizes he belongs to no organization and cannot take quests here, so he stands and looks at the mound, thinking the elf was right that joining a guild is the fastest way to make money. The memory of the guild sickens Lith because of how they treated him before, so he casts a spell over the berry to make it grow and prosper, and a sprout emerges from the ground. Magic sparkles around him and waves of power flow from where he stands. This time he is sure he has come for real freedom. Many berry bushes grow up around him, giving him food to live on. He looks over the mature plants, picks the berries, and smiles at how well they grew, noting the berries are glossy and beautiful. He realizes he will need to make baskets, prepare preserves, and find a wizard to dry them properly. Back at the market, he and the girls hide behind a tent. The hero shows 2 baskets of berries, and Mia says these are the very ones and that there are so many, while Manhwa is surprised as well. Lit says he can keep giving the same amount regularly as long as the market price does not fall. The girl is scared. Imagining him as a bandit, she asks in horror if he is a badly behaved young master, and the hero is surprised by that description. Lit assures her this is a mutually beneficial business. Mia asks again if this is true. He sees she is afraid, acknowledges that bandits exist in this world too, and convinces her he is telling the truth, so she won't worry. He knows this sounds suspicious even to himself and is already starting to worry. Mia looks at the guy with tense, worried eyes. Manhwa joins the conversation and calmly says he's fine and a good person, which surprises Lita. Convinced, Mia agrees and asks him how much he wants for the delivery. Holding up a paper, he shows the amount and says that with the deposit it's about that much. He insists it's not negotiable because it's for his future. Mia hesitates a little, then gives in. Stepping closer to him, she says confidently that they've agreed. This is a great chance, she says, and to avoid missing it she must show animal qualities, and the man agrees that you must enter the tiger's den to get a tiger cub and admits it is not easy. Mia says she does not know what the proverb means. Suppose he was trying to explain the importance of risk in simple terms. Mia asks for his name while addressing him as a valued customer. Realizing he hasn't introduced himself, he sees Maya looking expectantly, and Manhwa saying she wants to know too, and feels they trusted him and judged him by his actions rather than by rumors. Memories of being called names like Mr. Lazy or Hero bring a small, sad but warm smile. Offering his hand, he says his name and adds that it's a pleasure to meet them. Mia returns the handshake eagerly and nods respectfully. A handshake shows the negotiation succeeded and that they are acquainted. Mia happily says that she can now repay her debt. The man hesitantly asks if she is a good merchant. Manhwa glances at him, resting her chin on her notebook. Back at the land sales office, Lit apologizes to the elf for disturbing him during his lunch break. The elf says at least the hero noticed that. The man understands that many see the administrator as an autonomous golem who can help with anything at any time, and sympathizes with him. The elf asks if his problem is solved, and he replies yes. Pulling bags of money onto the table, He says he earned more than he thought, and that there is a big difference between what he has now and what he had before. Elv insists that no amount of gold coins will ever be enough, but the man, convinced otherwise, unties one of the bags. Holding up a coin, he says it is mithril. The man looks amazed. Lit says he heard the Empire and the autonomous regions treat small coins like gold and silver differently. Although the boy thought he didn't have enough for the fees and registration, adding what he earned shows it was the right amount. The price surprised him, and the elf unties all the bags to find mithril coins spilling out everywhere. The man grabs a bag and shouts excitedly that it holds 100 very rare coins made of a rare metal that are easily traded in many countries, and that even he rarely sees them. And then he looks around wearily. Clamping his hand over the man's mouth, he tells him not to scream because he doesn't want to stand out. The elf is thrilled to see so many coins. The man silently pleads with him not to say anything about it. Apologizing, the man asks Lit how he managed to get so much money in such a short time. The guy awkwardly says he is simply unemployed. The elf studies him closely and asks his name. The boy worries he looks suspicious. The man keeps staring at him. He says his full name hesitantly. The elf apologizes, saying it is a simple formality, and it breathes a sigh of relief. Taking a quill, the man starts filling out paperwork and asks the boy if he has joined the guild. Lithwarbly answers no, and the elf says it is a loss. Placing the seal, he tells the boy to come in the evening because he will have finished everything else by sunset, and Leith thanks him as the elf bids him farewell. Lit, eyes sparkling with joy and a smile on his face, holds the document and says this whole thing now belongs to him. Again, the man tells the boy the clothing guild store will have a sale in 30 seconds, and the boy doesn't understand why he's saying it. The elf calmly tells him to change both his cloak and his interests. Realization hits the boy as he sees the imperial emblem on his cloak had been drawing attention to him all along, and the elf looks away awkwardly. The boy finds the man's gesture very kind and thanks him. The elf acts as if he has nothing to do with it. At the hotel for the night, he hangs up and unpacks his things, and on the bedside table is a flask with a seed and a lit candle. Clean and showered, he collapses onto the bed and says it was a long journey. He hasn't had a decent place to stay in a long time, and there's even a shower there. Lying on the bed, he is content thinking they did a lot today, like harvesting, buying land and all the seeds and seedlings, and ordering an ox cart for tomorrow. Happy that he now has money, he opens his eyes and looks at the ceiling. He remembers everyone he met that day and thinks they're all good. Lit almost decides to join the guild, but seeing the cloak on the floor makes him change his mind. Seeing the imperial emblem, he confidently decides he won't repeat the same mistake and will be free this time. At 16, he saved the Empire, but what awaited him, nepotism, pampering, jealousy, and other unpleasant things, was no different from before his reincarnation. Realizing he had been reincarnated into another world and given a second life, he told everyone he no longer wanted it. He gave up fame to become a court magician. He made that decision and easily got the job because of his merits. He assumed that because the people there were the Empire's highest elite, they would treat him as a colleague and equal. Years later, whispers spread that he only got the job because of the hero's connections and that he was intimidating. Hearing that, he realized nothing had changed here. He worked a lowly job with no connection to witchcraft or botanical research, and one day a colleague approached him. Arrogantly, the man in glasses said that since the hero was free, he had a job for him and asked for a favor. Assigned to a dark, rarely used area no one else wanted, he cleaned unopened archives and often worked a lot of overtime. Surprisingly, studying the research left by old court magicians that conceals a secret proved fascinating. There he found a legend about the world tree and remembered it also existed in his own world. A girl with 2 tails flashed across the page as the boy turned the pages, engrossed in his reading. A sudden distraction made him look away. On the desk stood a flask that cast a column of light. As if under a spell, he stepped closer and reached out his hand to her. His hand slid across the glass while his eyes stayed on the soft light. He picked up the flask, held it up to his face, and peered into the contents that gave off a mysterious glow. The silvery seed inside the vessel caught his eye with a faint blue tint. Lit did not know what species it was and had never seen or heard of anything like it, so he decided to study it as a possible new species. Suddenly, a crowd rushed into the room and told the man to stay put. Still holding the flask, He turns to the confused crowd as the guy on glasses shout that he is accused of poisoning His Majesty's tea at the dock and is now being arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. Lit realizes what has happened and tucks the flask into his pocket. He remembers that at the trial everyone shouted that he should get the death penalty and be banned from the Empire for life. It became clear he had been drawn into a struggle among ambitious courtiers and was falsely accused. When he realized he'd been set up, he welcomed his exile, and at that moment he finally understood that reincarnation is not exactly freedom. After that, he decided he had to create it himself. That morning he had breakfast and got ready. He put on the new clothes he had bought the day before, boots, gloves, and a raincoat with a class bon arranged like an inverted L. The man looked at himself in his new clothes, unsure they suited him, since he had left the choice to the seller. The same girl in a cart met him as before, a startling surprise if he was really going to live in the middle of nowhere. She described his future home as an isolated island on land, and he looked out the window at the busy street and dreamed about that place in the middle of the desert. He noted that this is exactly what he likes about it, saying it has both water and wasteland and is far from any human habitation. Confidently, the man says this is the best place for him, and the girl reluctantly accepts it. Let's say he has no plans to return to the city, and the girl says she will miss him. She says it will be hard for her to get there, but asks him to tell her if he changes his mind. Lit thanks the girl. They slowly move away from the city. Driving past the fields, the boy feels his dreams from before and after his reincarnation are finally coming true. And above all, he wants to grow as many plants as possible, including beautiful and unusual flowers, vegetables, and fruits. A day passes and night falls on the road, and he imagines waking in the morning, going to bed in the evening, eating what he has grown and earned, and living peacefully and happily to his own satisfaction. When they arrive, the girl waves goodbye and he waves back, then sets his suitcase down beside him. Lit looks around and realizes he cannot see the city, and as far as the eye can see, his world and life stretch out. A vast desert lies before him, yet when he opens his arms, he sees freedom right in front of him. Facing the rising sun, he declares that this is the best of all worlds. Lit takes out a flask holding a seed and thinks about what kind of flower will grow from it. Sitting on the ground, he says he is looking forward to it, convinced this time he will enjoy a measured life. About a week ago in the capital, Mia was thrilled that they had a monopoly on powerful potions. She offered Manhwa some of their delicious food, but Manhwa declined and jotted a note in her notebook. When Mia asks about plans, Manhwa says she's simply too busy and they haven't been in touch for a long time. Talking about a great mage from the imperial capital, she gets ready to start an article, and Maya praises her work and says she will go with her. Manhwa claims to be the best reporter at the information guild, Wings of a Feather, and is pursuing a new star called Lit. At night, it stays in a tent in the middle of the desert, where morning dew rolls down the fabric. Tossing and turning on the couch, he watches a flask of semen on a nearby suitcase give the room a faint glow, and he cannot understand why it feels so cold. Directly above him sits a pixel girl with a serious expression, looking straight at him. Staring at him, she demands he stand up. Opening his eyes, the boy says good morning, wonders if the girl's gaze is causing the cold, and calls her Navi, an artificial spirit. He tries to ask her to let him sleep a little longer, but Navi yells at him to get up. Lit awkwardly tells her they haven't seen each other in a long time and asks how she is. She responds, realizing he is hiding everything behind a smile. Navi explains that because there were no activation requests for a long time, she went into emergency mode and asks where they are. Seated on the couch, the boy tells them they are on land he bought, and that it is a 10-day journey from Gauntland. Realizing this city is on the southern continent, the girl asks the man what happened, calls him master, and he does not know what to say. The man thinks artificial spirits are lost in ancient magic, and the Empire calls them semi-autonomous magical lifeforms, but Navi is fully autonomous and moves on its own. Stepping closer, she asks harshly whether his brain has rotted from sleeping so long. The man notices that Navi is not only independent, but also speaks very loudly. She stares straight into his eyes and demands an answer. She asks again what happened to him, and he waves her off, saying it's nothing serious, just a change of scenery and a move. She does not answer, then quietly admits she is a puppet made by the master, an artificial spirit navigator, and that she follows his orders. He objects, insisting she is not a puppet because she has her own mind, and she replies that this does not change anything, and that even if she is autonomous and has a will, she is still a tool. Navi says the owner gave her a fake personality, and she is still just a thing. The guy asks the girl not to call herself a thing. Turning to him, she says she understands he wants to live independently and not rely on people or magic for help. Navi says that despite everything, tools feel lonely when they are not used, and the boy thinks about her words. Skeptically, she says she at least knows why he is in such a small tent, and Lit protests that it was very hard for him. The man listens and assures her he will rely on her if he needs anything. Navi bows his head. Satisfied, she says she will enter sleep mode. Lit bids her goodnight while he still thinks about the word tools he used. Dressed, he steps outside into the bitter cold and realizes they urgently need to find a place to live. The guide decides to find a watering hole first and is surprised by how rugged the terrain is here. Pulling out his compass, he sees the mountains to the east are densely forested, so there may be a spring there, and he heads that way. He thinks they should start looking for a house and keep walking toward the mountains. The latest news says plant magic can improve the soil, but he thinks using it would be cheating and too easy because he wants to live like a real adventurer, and he only has a limited number of magical seeds. Convinced he can live on his own energy for as long as possible, he begins walking toward the mountain with a suitcase and a walking stick, noting he hasn't walked in a long time. Gasping, he leans heavily on his walking stick, realizing how hard this is, then looks at the eastern mountains rising ahead and considers how to reach them. Convincing himself he isn't using magic and is on his own, he takes a few slow steps, and then the stick falls to the ground. The boy uses his rapid growth to build a cart and rails for it to roll on. The hero insists that even in his previous world as a hardcore gamer, he would not have wasted time roaming the map. Rolling along the rails in a cart, he feels the wind and happily thinks how good it is. Lit rolls down fast and compares the drop to a roller coaster. He imagines they could build a train from it. The idea of a train in another world excites him. Satisfied he has enough speed, the hero squints and pulls the wooden stopcock down to slow down. Horrified, he watches as the lever breaks and the cart keeps racing along the rails at the same speed. He knows it's dangerous because the road slopes downward and he's picking up speed. Then he smells smoke and sees the tire smoking, and at that moment something else grabs his attention. At the end of the path where the rails haven't been laid, they encounter a large stone and the hero realizes he could run into it now. Panic hits him at the thought of crashing at full speed if he can't stop, and he is already cursing silently and bracing for impact. Lit remembers Navi and calls to her. Navi says mapping has started. After analysis, she reports a possible descent 220 meters to the north-northwest. The girl says the cart will reach the big rock in 4 seconds, but the man interrupts her. The cart keeps rushing. Realizing there's no time to build rails, he casts a new spell, throws new seeds, and urges them to grow faster. The cart on the rails is flung into the air and breaks apart while the man sails over a huge rock. Falling gently into a wide meadow of flowers, he laughs and says it was fun. Navi appears beside him, notes that he made the flower pillows, and casually asks if he is alive. Lit says happily that she is just in time. Grateful, the man thanks her for saving their lives. She gives a small, sincere smile. She says there is no need to thank her because she is a tool, but Lit just waves it off, saying she is at it again. Here, members. The first voice he heard was Novi's. She asked how he was doing and welcomed him to harmony, like the system message in the games. Using ancient magic found in the ruins, he gave this voice a body and created an artificial spirit. He literally turned the instrument into a living thing. Wanting her as a friend, the man confidently says he will tell her why he was there. They talk late into the night. Navi looks at him sadly and asks why he did not tell her sooner. He explains that if others find out he is an outcast, she will curse them for 3 months. Navi says grimly that 12 months of abuse will be enough. Lit finds it scary and continues to explain. He adds he did not want her to hear all that nonsense, and convinced he had put it all behind him, she asks Heart softly if he missed her. Lit turns to her and gives a humble smile, then looks up at the sky and says, he's finally free. Smiling, he gazes at the star-filled sky and imagines complete freedom. Navi looks at the man sadly. She says she has a rough idea of what's going on and slips into sleep mode. Lit says goodnight. He gets up and thinks he knows Navi is angry and feels sorry for him because he didn't call her before he built a house or something, so this wouldn't have happened. Staring into the distance, he raises his hands and says he'll sleep in the tent tonight and make it better than before. Navi says she has something to tell him. She says 93% of his property was destroyed. Stunned by her words, the lady realizes the tent is destroyed. He asks her to find them somewhere to live, but she no longer answers. A girl watches them from behind a rock. Lit lists everything broken in the fall while sitting next to the wreckage, realizing almost nothing is left but a blanket and some seeds. He pulls his knees to his chest and says sadly that it is harder than he thought. Grabbing the staff, he says there's nothing to be done and rises, thinking he must survive for now. Waving his staff, the boy throws seeds and casts a spell for tall growth, causing vines to rise from the ground in front of him. They intertwine, wrap around each other, climb higher, and eventually apples appear. Lantern-like peaks appear with a glowing center as Lit closes his eyes and concentrates. Opening his eyes, he confidently surveys the finished fence and the lit yard. Next, he checks out a medium-sized log house on small piles and decides this is where he'll live. In the yard, he makes a tap from twigs that sticks out of the ground. When he comes close, he thinks regular water is the key to life, but only a few drops come out of the tap. He sits down thinking he will not be able to reach the groundwater because the soil is too dry. He realized he'd gone so far he couldn't find the river because only a faint trail remained. He figured it once flowed here, and when he opened the map, he saw that even with GPS the area was still a wasteland. We should sadly consider whether the land Tomiya bought has any water. Recalling the conversation with the elf, the hero notes a flat area set aside for building, some wasteland, and a source of water. And because the man had insisted on that plot, he now suspects a mistake. He sees the small amount in the cup and thinks at least there's something. It will take time to build up, but should be enough to grow usable seeds. The man remembers the so-called mysterious X seed and is relieved it is intact. Because Lit removed it from the archive before the trial, he knows it is very valuable. The hero believes it is a tree seed and wants to grow a sapling first. He makes a small pot, fills it with soil, then excitedly takes a seed and plants it. Lifting the part toward the sky, the boy waits impatiently to see what will grow from it. He thinks he needs to moisten the surface today because he will water it in the morning. Then the hero yawns, climbs the steps into the house and decides to eat the apples he prepared. But after biting one, he winces at the acidity. That morning, the boy goes outside, looks at the beds and peers at the nearby rock. He assumes these are people, though he doubts it, and then sees someone's hand clinging to the rock. Panic hits him, and he initially assumes it is a hallucination, but he quickly steadies himself. Gathering strength, he prepares to approach the rock, and before moving he glances around furtively and then peers behind it. A girl sits with her hands covered in wounds, clutching a potted plant to her chest, tears in her eyes. Amazed by his find, the man can hardly believe it. The girl's tiara is not a decoration but is made from a real flower, he notes. Waking Navi, he asks her for an assessment. Navi appears and confirms the reboot is complete. After the evaluation, Navi reveals the girl is 14 years old in human terms, that the different sizes are kept secret from the evaluation system, and that she is a member of the flower people. The boy beams at the news, shouting that he never expected to meet the flower people. The girl is frightened, and Navi reproachfully says her anxiety has spiked and that this is too much. The hero looks puzzled. The boy remembers reading and hearing about the flower people, a race who live in nature and care for plants, but he doesn't believe they are real. He tries to quiet the swarm of questions in his head, wondering the girl's name, whether others of her race exist, and why she planted crops in his fields. Initially, he tries to calm the girl, telling her everything is fine and asking if she has any problems. Navi tells the boy that people believe the flower people cannot understand other people's language, and the girl watches him tensely while he notices the plant in her hand. Lit recognizes them as 6 springberries and realizes she planted them in the field. Sitting at her level, he gives his name first and asks for hers. The girl hesitantly asks again and looks at the hero. Navi only wants to say something else, but the girl quietly says her name, Frau, and the flower on her tiara blooms. With her tiara in bloom, she repeats her name more openly and confidently. A man says he's pleased to meet you, and that he's a plant mage. Lit notices Fruk can understand simple words. Navi asks him if he will help her with Frau. He replies that she is not a significant threat to their ambitions. Holding the plant, Fraud looks sadly at its petals while the hero tells her not to worry because he can fix it and promises that everything will be fine with him. And she turns to him in surprise. After planting the seedling in his garden bed and tying it to a peg, he and Fru sit beside it, and the boy says it needs water and iron, so he sprinkles iron powder on the sprout and then waters it. He casts a healing spell that makes them healthy, and their leaves become better, brighter, and juicier. She watches what is happening with a surprised sigh. He thinks he is simply supporting the plant's own healing power. As he begins to tell her not to worry, he stops mid-sentence and looks at her in amazement. The tiara's flower fully blooms and spreads to cover nearly her whole head like a headdress. A man with shining eyes gazes at a magnificent plant. Believing the flower opens when she is happy, he finds it wonderful and has never seen one like it. The woman awkwardly thanks the man in parts. Lit stares at her in shock. A bright smile lights her face, and this time she genuinely thanks him with all her heart. The boy finds it very cute. Navi appears and asks if they are in trouble. Denise says the plants are not a threat. The girl agrees modestly. Fruth pushed herself up on his chest and kept thanking him without stopping. He watches the girl with sympathy. The boy says sadly that Fru was in a difficult situation, so she risked planting berries in his field to look for nutritious soil. At night, he imagines her trying to keep the plant alive on this dry land for all these years. Navi tells him Fru's love for him only grows. He sends her to bed. She reminds him not to forget his own ambitions. Convinced he wants to live alone and not get involved, he tells himself he is just a stranger. The girl clings to his clothes with her hands, and he notices she is shaking. He says the springberry is a peach-type berry that tastes like raspberries and is used to make potions, but when turned into a sour juice, it has no tonic effect on people. Lit carefully places his hands on her back and hugs her, believing the berry will heal her. He thinks Frau wants to help her people. Her eyes widen at that. Deep in the eastern mountains sits a hidden village of flower people. Its people live in small tree houses. All the residents are looking at something with no concern on their faces. Fraud brought him to her village. They sit in one of the houses, and he asks whether they regularly drink the healing water from the spring berries. Fraud does not understand him. The boy rephrases his sentence so she can understand it better. She answers affirmatively. Lit thinks the springberry infusion is what they call a potion. Since the year before last, the springberries have produced poor harvests and often die before the first seedlings are planted, he says. And when he asks if they have all died, Fru confirms they have, adding that this has left the residents worse off. He knows springberries are no longer used for healing infusions, and the flower people who depend on them are weakening fast, beginning with the elderly and children. The boy realizes that everyone can die, and the girl confirms it with tears. The hero looks at the trembling Frau and realizes the village elder's daughter had been running desperately to save her. Leith frowns. It dawns on him that the situation is worse than he imagined. Lit suggests the berry is a medicinal plant, and that eating it could help reduce diseases in the area. He reasons that from what he's heard, it never rains here, yet the mountains are wet, so there may be groundwater, but the people lack the means to pump it out. Noticing the seedlings lack iron and fresh water, the hero concludes the main problem is the lack of water. Standing up from the table, he says he will plant springberries in his field because he has groundwater. Fraul looks at the hero in amazement. He points out the land has already been plowed. Navi interrupts and asks if he will help this settlement. The boy agrees. Jackson's girl warns him that planting could make his land infertile and that without water, life would be hard even for him. And she wonders whether this will distract him from his aspirations or whether it would be better for him to live alone and carefree. The girl builds tension, reminding him of his past lives and how hard he tried, then points out that he is about to repeat the same mistake. Smiling, he tells her not to worry and that he'll take care of himself. Navi disappears. Explaining his plan, he will enlarge and extend the underground water pipes to increase how much water can be pumped, and adding a little iron will let him handle his growth simulator. He promises the plants will grow beautifully, and the girl, not believing it, asks again. Lit realizes that even with magic they won't have enough seeds and will need people to water and heal on a large scale, which is very troublesome. The girl rushes out of the house and asks every villager for help, and soon the man is amazed by what he sees. Every resident arrived confident and ready to help. Surprised to realize he is an outsider from a different race, he sees that they still believe in him and stand united, so he will not let them down and promises to put things in order. Standing in his yard, the man thinks that springberries have a language of flowers. Waving his staff and thinking of growth, he makes the shoots spring up. The flower people pass buckets to each other to water their plants. They water the beds one by one, each tending their own, while the hero thinks about sowing. He adds another condition in his head. That evening he tells Frau they can go to bed, but she stubbornly stays in bed while Lit looks at her condescendingly. It honors nobility that rises above dishonor, and keeps fighting for their land even when it is empty. The boy starts his rapid growth spell, and the girl watches the field, tense. All they planted with so much effort sprouts and blooms, and everyone jumps for joy. A tearful fraud approaches the ripe fruits and forces a happy smile. They build a large fire. They set a large table covered with bowls of food, put a crown on the man, and thanked him repeatedly. He had no time for excuses, saying he couldn't eat it all and wondering how the crown had appeared on his head. Lit also asks that they not send their daughters to live with him because it looks suspicious, and all the while the villagers keep thanking him. The man stares at it all and grabs his head, unable to understand how it happened. He remembers how they worked for 3 days and 3 nights to revive the berries, then made a decoction from them and gave it to the sick. Note that thanks to their efforts, the patient seems to be recovering and says that after 3 nights, everything is finally okay. After a while, he sat with Frau on a log while she clung close to him. He quietly wonders why she is so close and asks her not to get attached to him. Pouting in annoyance, she looks very cute to him. Navi steps in and comments on relationships built on that foundation. He asks what she means, and she replies skeptically that he is now the savior of an entire race. Lit tells her to shut up. Later, Navi asks the hero why he helped those people. He looks at the guests thoughtfully and says he is simply interested in their company because they share his respect for nature, and the girl is not fully convinced but accepts his answer. Fru spots a figure by the fire and rises. The others turn to watch her. Crying, she runs to her as fast as she can. She rushes into the girl's arms and holds her tightly. Barely holding back tears, the girl says something to Frau, then sobs and answers her. Navi says the girl is very beautiful. The man notes she has also recovered from her illness, and after a moment of thought, he realizes something. He says she is the tribe's leader and Fru's mother. Navi notes that they definitely resemble the girl and looks at the boy. Tears fall from Litz's eyes as he says he's glad he could help them. The girl looks at him thoughtfully. She remembers that at first she was only a voice meant for him, the only voice he could recognize, and she ran the analysis for him. One day, Lit spoke about abstract topics, hesitating slightly before answering. When the voice answered, the boy was pleased and began asking questions, and soon they were having a casual conversation. From then on, she stayed by his side, supporting him in simple daily moments and in dangerous, life-threatening ones. Once he asked whether life without a body made her bored. She said it was a small thing because he was talking to her. Let him apologize to her, remembering how he made her body and believing the magic would help her become autonomous. He said bitterly that he didn't want to use her as a tool, and she looks at him tenderly. Navi smiles softly and tells him he is as kind as ever. Lit denies it, saying he is at best a good man. She says it's not quite the right word, which prompts him to ask what she's talking about. She admits she was wrong to disagree with him about helping the people and congratulates him. Never before has she seen so many people benefit from his actions. He watches the celebrating residents. Some are drinking, others sit quietly, and others enjoy their newly found time with loved ones. The boy watches the reunited mother and daughter, feeling his heart warm, and says Navi is right. Still, the girl notes he tends to take on too much responsibility and offers her services, promising to help. She gently hopes he will live his own life true to his spirit. Lit is surprised to realize he saw a smile on Navi's usually impassive face. He chuckles and says she's very frank today. She shyly looks away. She looks up at him with her cheeks flushing while the hero teases her, saying Navi can be shy too. She gives him a reproachful look, and he laughs, apologizes and thanks her, then thinks about enjoying life here alone without talking to anyone. Looking at Frau as she waves, he realizes the people he's met in Gauntland are different from those he'd known before, and he reaches out his hand to the girl. Fru takes him by the hand and pulls him toward them, and the boy gives in and stands up. Lit used to think drunken parties were pure torture in his old life. The atmosphere made him uncomfortable and he felt awkward around people. Now, dancing with Fry around the fire, he smiles brightly. He notes to himself that he feels pretty good. Fry, standing beside his mother, asks the boy to say his name. At first he blurted it out without thinking. Then he realized it was ugly and repeated it in full. Fry calls him by name and, in a broken voice, tries to say they want to work in his fields. He asks awkwardly what she means, and then it finally dawns on him. Again, the man asks if that's true. Gauntland has published an article about a veteran magician from the imperial capital who recently arrived on the southern continent. Manhwa puts them out on the street, promoting them as a bonus. Mia asks if it's about Lit. The girl reproachfully tells her not to ruin the story. Manhwa says the story is hers alone, and she will earn from it in small amounts. The article lands at the feet of a blonde girl with a long ponytail. She is reading about a plant manipulator and a magician. Her eyes light up when she recognizes him from the description and says she has finally found him. Clutching the newspaper in a flood of emotion, she says selflessly that she, Adele, will definitely return him to the capital. A pot with an unknown seed sits by an open window, lit and bringing thoughts of leaving everything to start a new life. And as he works hard, he reflects on coming to this remote wasteland. Looking into the distance, he thinks he chose this to enjoy a measured life. Turning to the beds, he is surprised to see that now all the flower people are working in his fields, which he had not expected. Navi says it happened because he didn't say no when they asked, and the boy feels doomed, seeing their determination and unable to refuse. Reviewing their work, he finds they harvested more than expected, including 50 baskets of spring berries for his business and 50 baskets of the same berries for medicinal use. Watching the flower folk at work, you notice how careful they are with their plants and how they take the initiative to tend the fields. At that point, Fry waves at him. Content? He waves back at her. Navi regards her skeptically. She says sadly that he is lazy and will pay for it someday. But Lit does not realize what she has been through, and the girl turns to him again. He reports a stranger has entered their territory, and a huge clawed paw appears on the dry ground. The man waves to the newcomers and says everything is fine, and he has been informed. Navi asks if he knows these people. The flower people are also watching the guests. Lit says they helped him a little. Maya and Manhwa wave back with enthusiasm as they ride in a carriage atop a giant sand lizard. Mia is amazed by how many red berries there are and points out that they are everywhere. Suppose he owes it all to the flower people. The residents regard the new guests with doubt. Manhwa notes the mention of the flower people in her notebook, and Maya realizes she didn't know about it. So now that they've arrived, she decides to approach Lit. She says she wants to ask him to make another secret, exclusive contract with their guild just between them. Thinking it over, he sees the upside that he no longer has to worry about where to sell his goods, and they can keep his location secret. Although he wanted to offer the contract himself, he's glad Mia did it first. Convinced he can do better, he learns the other man wants to sell more, but he still agrees to continue working with her. Mia agrees to the proposal before he can give any details, saying her old intuition tells her it is the right decision. Manhwa says skeptically that Mia is more willing than ever to make cheap jokes, and Lit replies amiably that he'll get the document now, but Manhwa interrupts and tells him to do it later. The girl says it is her turn to do her job, which surprises the man who thought they were from the same guild. But Mia convinces him otherwise, and Manhwa apologizes for not introducing herself sooner. She says she is the best reporter of the Information Guild Wings of the Feather. The man looks in amazement at the newspaper thrust at him. The girl says contentedly that she reported well on the feats he had done, so he could thank her. Let reads the line about the mage from the imperial capital. Manhwa adds that she deliberately made herself into a heroine who was attacked. A girl approaches him and warns him not to make the situation worse. Mia says Wings of a Feather is a major player and would be known across the city if not the whole southern continent. The thought terrifies him to the point of horror because it would end all their ambitions. He asks Navi for help. The girl refuses, saying reproachfully that she was deactivated then and didn't know what happened. Lit has to admit it. Manman knocks the guy down and jumps on him. Leaning in conspiratorially, she says he can tell them anything. Her hair tickles his cheek, and he realizes it feels like irresistible cat fur. He finds it hard to resist the soft fur as the girl presses down on him from above. First, the man must briefly ask who lit it, and then he exhales heavily. At that moment, Fry approaches them and interrupts the conversation. She asks whether they are his friends. Everyone turns to look at her, and Mia notices they are more like business partners. The girl asks again about the word partners. Fry opens his arms in a warm welcome and says, "The boys' friends are their friends too." The villagers are already carrying a barrel of drink and offering eager hospitality. In unison, the girls say they are friends who love to eat, already drooling over the barrel's contents. They celebrate that it is Matatobi wine. People nearby join the celebration. Lit is amazed that the flower people can do something like that. Fry replies that it's what cats love. The man remarks that it produces effects much like Matatabi wine. He points out this recipe has been in the Frau family for generations. The hero admires how many interesting recipes they have and breathes a sigh of relief. Lit says, "Thanks, Frau." I'm glad this odd move gave him time to calm down and think. He says he will meet Manhwa. Excited, Frau asks him whether they will have fun. He declines, saying he has a serious conversation and an important business meeting ahead. Taking a sip from his mug steadies his nerves. Sitting with Mia and Manhwa, the guy hears them call the drink delicious and praise Lit as a good conversationalist. Adds that it was fun they made the effort to come, and asks how they liked the drink. Mama says it's very tasty. The hero is glad to hear that and urges them to drink more. They say he's very considerate. Later, the girls are already tipsy. Lit chuckles as he watches them and admits he never expected his entertainer skills to be useful in this life. Manhwa asks him if he knows who made this drink. He says the flower people did this and adds that their processing technologies are truly amazing, and the wine and juice from the spring berries are just as wonderful. Myanmar can't believe something like that happened here, and Mia agrees, saying she'll have another drink, while the man decides now is the time to act. He moves the interview up, and a tipsy man comes toward him, saying she must see everything and urging him to hurry. Refusing to say anything about himself because he doesn't want anyone to know he's here, he offers better material. And Myanmar looks at him doubtfully. Lit throws out ideas about a famous sake brewed in an uncharted region, a mysterious flower tribe, and a hidden treasure. Manhwa admits she was surprised those people existed. She calls it too simple, but the news about a mysterious wizard saving a fading race of flowers is far more interesting. Worried that she remains professional even when drunk, he cannot give up his ambitions. Lit says Mia should sell this drink at the city's harvest. Manhwa asks whether he means the contract. Pointing at the table, he says everything here tastes great and that with their reputation, it will sell even better. Manhwa agrees and asks about the drink. The man says it depends on who makes it, since people naturally want to know everything. Mana knows the story is meant to boost sales. The man wants to dilute it so they can reveal it gradually, and the woman calls it a strange rumor with no truth or value. The man says that may be true for the average reporter, but she has the enthusiasm and encouragement not to fear bandits and the tenacity to pursue a story in such a remote area. Manhwa's eyes light up as she insists she must be able to write a realistic story. Lit notes their article has generated buzz because of its connection to me and my products, and people actually like it. He says customers drink beverages they buy at my shop and eagerly await the next item. The hero says he wants a village where he can stop, be surrounded by delicious food and drinks, and dance in front of a large fire feeling completely happy. Enthusiastically, he says he wants to live happily and create, as people say, a utopia, a real paradise. Excited, Manhwa replies that the whole picture may be left unsaid and turned into a legend, and the man feels she understands him. Assume she got it right. If the story turns into a legend, their brand will only grow. Lit holds out his hand to her and urges her to accept the offer, saying it will benefit her, then adds that he wants an exclusive contract with them, and Manhwa notes it is the same as Mia's. He tells her he wants her to live the life of her dreams but insists no one find out about him, and Manhwa admits that if things go well, she will have a lot of money, but then hesitates and starts to mention those kinds of articles. Mia cuts her off by jumping on Manhwa, saying she is not in a good mood and offering to help the guy. Lit thinks he should take the chance. Noticing she has nearly given in, he takes her hands with all his sincerity and begs her to agree. The girl purses her lips, pulls out a pen, and says she can't do anything about it. Manhwa the Great says she is ready to sign an exclusive contract with Lit, and they can rely on her as a top reporter. Both of them hug the embarrassed guy and tell him this is a secret agreement among the three of them. Manhwa says she's glad to meet you and Lit thanks her. They insist they must escape poverty and get rich. Someone calls it a money grab, but the group ignores the warning and clinks their mugs again to celebrate the successful contract. And Navi thinks this is where they should have started. He feels he can protect himself and the peace here, and that he's made some very good friends. A month later, they return to him, and Mia rushes over, shouting that something amazing has happened. Mia happily reports their product is a big hit in the city. Manhwa says she's tired of asking customers for any extra information, but the man notes the legend is gaining momentum, and people are becoming interested. Both girls said excitedly that after teaming up with Lit, bags of money were waiting for them. The guy looks at them softly. He is pleased his expectations about them were confirmed, that they are steadily growing their wealth, and relieved they are keeping his information secret as promised. Lit is confident the first stage is complete, because he no longer has any financing problems and has reserves for management. Navi congratulates him, says a rest would be welcome, and the man readily agrees. He announces to everyone, including the flower people in the beds, that it's time to celebrate. He suggests we have a barbecue. He sets out the grill. Manhwa says it should be with alcohol, and Mia agrees. The white-haired girl says they must go in turn order, and Mia starts chasing her around the grounds. Frau just smiles. Lit licks his lips, staring at a large piece of meat. He believes the meat came straight from the butcher and asked a mage to keep it cool, so it's still fresh. They also have a luxury set from Mia, plus special salt and fireproof skewers. He cuts the meat, threads it onto skewers, seasons it with salt, and sets it over the fire. When the food was ready, the vegetables had a crisp crust, and the meat was dripping with aromatic juices. He pointed to the right side of the grill where the food was frying and explained it was for the journalist and the merchant because they couldn't eat onions and garlic. The girls were surprised he knew their secrets, which was true. The vegetable kebabs were for Frau and her people. The boy then gave another kebab to Navi, who accepted it with a grateful smile. After distributing the food, the young man checked that everyone had enough and saw a crowd of happy people who all wished one another and him bon appetit. When Lit took a small bite, he froze and covered his mouth with his hand as if something had happened. His reaction scared everyone nearby, and an alarmed Navi immediately rushed to the master, not understanding what had happened. The young man fell to the ground, and the frightened girls rushed over, asking whether the meat was poisoned or rotten, while Lit stayed down and raised his other hand to his mouth, frightening them more. To everyone's surprise, the young man spread his arms, lifted his tear-filled face, and happily announced that the dish was very tasty. Frozen with bewilderment, the girls did not expect this and found the reaction very strange. The journalist admitted it made her cry, and she was not the only one. He promised not to do it again and told the girls not to cry. A little later, as Lit finished his shashlik, Mia approached him with a request, speaking to him as the owner of the place. She asked for the territory to be named, and Mama agreed, saying it was very inconvenient for everyone that it had no name. Smiling, Frau suddenly ran up to Lit to show she also wanted to know the name of this place. He hadn't thought about it at all. Navi noticed the worried master lacked some taste. The man looked awkwardly at his assistant, as he hadn't expected her to understand him. The girl surrounded Lit, demanding he name the nameless land immediately. Taking in his surroundings, he looked closely at the nearby trees, the house he had built, and the girls around him, and he seemed to remember something from his past. He named the place the village of Togan. The girls said it was a very beautiful name, and only Navi noticed it came from his homeland, which was not a bad thing. He would never have imagined this in his old life. Out in the middle of nowhere, far from everyone he knew, he used the plants he had grown himself for an afternoon barbecue. Crowds of people made it clear this was not the life the man had dreamed of. Unbothered because he was happy anyway, he joyfully raised his hands and confidently announced that from that day on, it would be the village of Togan. Although many things went against his original plan, this place felt like paradise to him. It was a wonderful place with pleasant company, and there was nothing more to ask for. At night, he still doubted and may have wanted to be alone, but it was late, and the snoring girls around him kept him awake. Let's set the scene when Navi returned to him with a report, saying this time it was not a guest entering the territory but some kind of intruder, a beast-like creature showing clear hostility. 100 years ago, Underground ruins suddenly appeared in the northern continent of the Romancia Empire, and the empire was at war because monsters kept emerging from there. To protect themselves, the southern continent built a huge wall on the land connecting its upper region, blocking the only bridge between north and south to stop monster invasions. All of this meant there should be almost no monsters on the southern continent, so Lit couldn't understand how they were here. Navi noted that, in her view, this was a gap between theory and reality. Seeing that the northern and southern continents were nearly cut off, he realized he had relied too much on information from the Empire. The man asked how many monsters there were and what class they were. The assistant said he was alone and only at an average level, not an advanced one. Monsters in this world need different strength based on danger level, with the weakest swarming in droves, mid-level ones using magic, and advanced ones commanding large armies including a magic factory. The girl asked if they should retreat, but Lit refused, since when he lived in the Empire he had to fight almost alone. These were not low-level or advanced creatures, but monsters of a special class. Lit wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible, but first he needed to evacuate everyone so they would not be harmed. Meanwhile, the girls began to wake up. The girls woke screaming, unsure if they were so drunk they were hallucinating, as the tiger-like monster prepared to attack. The monster roared and attacked. Lit ordered Navi to clear everyone from the battlefield. Reluctant, but with no choice, Lit used a special combat herb. As the monster closed in, the young man accelerated his growth, but someone called to him to wait, forcing him to stop the attack before he could finish. The plants slammed into the monster before they could pierce it, and the man turned and realized it was Frau who had called him. The girl was summoning her people. She screamed, pointed at the huge cat, and her people rushed toward him without thinking, quickly understanding Fruz's idea. Charging forward, the flower people swarmed the huge cat and surrounded the monster on all sides, leaving him no chance to retreat. People dodged the terrible creature's attacks with defiance while Lit tried to figure out what was happening and why they were holding him back. And it had become a mass battle. The flower-tried people held bowls of water in their hands, and as they approached, they drank deeply and sprayed the water straight onto the creature. With a sudden stagger, the monster began to fall, its eyes closing slowly. At last he fell asleep on the ground, no longer a scary monster but a peacefully snoring kitten with huge claws and fangs. Lit realized the flower people had slipped drugs into his wine, so he was lucky. As the crowd celebrated, Lit was amazed they had subdued the creature in just a few minutes, and Navi interrupted to say that since they were here they should deal with the monster. In the Empire, things were simple. If they left monsters alive, they could attack again, so the Empire eliminated them on the spot. When one man noticed something, he froze. The flower people surrounded the monster and tried to lift it, but it was too heavy, so they shouted to give themselves strength. Lit couldn't tell if they really wanted to send him back to the eastern mountains, and Fro explained that this cat guarded the fields. He usually eats only berries and chases off the animals that eat them. They rewarded him with a drink for that. He was probably hungry today because the smell of meat was strong. Answering with his eyes, he realized something. They live here in symbiosis, but the man had only one option: get rid of them or use force, and that is what he would have done if he were alone now, while the flower people were pulling the animal with great effort but very slowly. Novi sighed, knowing this was only the beginning, but she gathered herself and said she was counting on Lit as the village elder. Lit looked up, clearly moved, and agreed. He ran to the flower people to help carry the huge cat to the eastern mountains. Lit turned and asked Frau Mia and a sleepy Manhwa to join their mission too. To celebrate defending their village, he suggested they all work together and then drink again. Later, after they finished, they sat by the window and thought. Navi would handle the bookkeeping, and Frown and her people would tend the fields and farms. The wholesale supplier is the Golden Path Merchant Guild, with Mia responsible, and information operations are handled by the wings of the Feather Guild under Manhwa. Sam Lit is the headman and chief protector of the village. The main problem is the water supply. The community relies on spring water, and it is unclear how long that will last. Crops are limited to low water varieties, so they cannot be produced in large quantities. The second problem was the food. What Frau cooked was good, but it relied entirely on the ingredients' flavor. Litz thought developing seasonings was clearly beyond him. Suddenly the man was surprised by something. He admired the pot on the windowsill. A mysterious seed began to sprout. A small sprout pushed up through the soil. This baby turned out to be a monocotyledon and is very light. And up close you can see tints ranging from blue to purple and from red to orange, with shades that change gradually and make it look beautiful. The boy thought the sprout's glow was magic, though he did not know what kind of plant it was, and carefully poked it with his finger. He grabbed the pot and held it tight against his chest, admiring its beauty and hoping it would start growing soon, while Navi watched in complete amazement. Her comment that it was disgusting frightened the man. Togan is just getting started, and its people are determined to do everything they can. The mysterious seed axe has become the butt of X. Morning arrived, and Frau opened her eyes. On waking, she goes straight to breakfast. After that, she gets ready. Her hair seems a little messy today. On field duty today, the girl will tend the garden with Lit and the rest of the villagers, and she is very happy that she saw more fruit than before. While everyone else rests and prepares drinks and juices, the girl and her people especially like trampling the berries because it feels like dancing. It was time for lunch. The girl told Lit the turnips they'd planted last time were ready to eat today. Lit asked happily if Frau had really prepared it all for him and the others. After working hard, lunch tasted especially good, and after lunch the flower people liked to nap because they felt warm and relaxed in the sun, while Fraud felt very energetic. Lit and Frau was just sitting in the sun when a man asked if the flower people did photosynthesis. Navi thought that was very uncultured. Frau froze because she still did not understand many words. The girl pulled out of the book she needed right away. Let frozen surprise. Holding a folk dictionary, the girl said happily that it was very important. Lit realized why she understood their language. She had studied it from a dictionary, though where she got it is unclear. Proud admitted that a kind person had given it to her long ago. The man intended to ask what kind of person would go that far, but he was surprised once more by something. His master's signature on the book made Lit cringe in horror, and Navi said those days had been simply awful. Fralma immediately asked if everything was okay, and the young man thanked her for her concern. He was genuinely surprised that his master visited their village and even taught them the language. Thanks to his mentor, he can speak to Frau like that and should thank him. The girl just looked at the guy, embarrassed. At first, things were hard for her, scary and sad, with everyone sick and her unsure what to do. But now everything is good and everyone is smiling, even her friends. Smiling broadly, the girl admitted she was very happy. At that moment, the young man remembered the cats were due today and saw Mia just in time, already greeting him. The young man asked where Manhwa was, and the cat admitted she had left because Manhwa did not show up on time. So maybe Manhwa had stayed up all night and overslept. An unknown girl ran across the desert carrying a crying Manhwa, happy that she had found him while the cat apologized and said she had no choice. They went straight to the village of Togan to see it lit. Lit suggested packaging the berry alcohol and using different pictures for each wine type. Pleased with the offer, Mia thought it was a good way to set the product apart and promised to speak with the master of the Artists' Guild. He realized the deal would be simple yet interesting, but their talk was cut short when Navi arrived with unpleasant news. Another uninvited guest was rushing toward them at high speed. Disappointed, Lit and Mia asked if this was happening again, and the assistant snapped that she had nothing to do with it. She still said the master knew him. The man squinted into the distance, trying to make something out. He hoped he did not have a meeting scheduled for today. He seemed to make out something, but the stranger was already at the gate, about to go in. Dismounting the beast she had been riding, the girl wore a cloak bearing the imperial house coat of arms, which glowed and drew attention. He saw Her Majesty Adele standing before him, with Manhwa shyly trailing behind. Adele looked very pleased to see him. Overjoyed to see him, the girl lifted the guy and squeezed him so hard his back cracked loudly. Adele awkwardly apologized to him. Meanwhile, Mia asked Manhwa who it was, but the cat only cried and apologized because she did not know who the girl was. Manhwa pointed at Adele and said the imperial woman told her she would not let her go until she answered her. The girl apologized for mocking, and said it was a misunderstanding because she had heard the cat was a member of the Information Guild. Lit introduced the stranger to the others. She was Adelia le Romancia, the 6th princess of the Romancia Empire and commander of the 15th Imperial Legion of Knights. Waving happily, the girl said, Lit was, as usual, doing his bit, and the man added they hadn't seen each other for a long time, while the cat whispered that the girl was too scary to be a princess. Adele admitted she hadn't known Lit was in the village and had trouble finding him. Meanwhile, Frau stood behind him and called out to the man. The princess ordered Lith to return to the imperial city to join her in punishing the courtiers who had driven him out. She was ready to get even with them herself. Her words frightened not only Frau but Lith as well. Insisting they must use force, the girl said force and violence are the same. The young man only asked her not to pass off violence as philosophy, but the princess raised her head with pride. The man admitted he appreciated the care, but wouldn't return to the imperial city and wanted to live a normal life. Adele was horrified by what she heard. The princess thought that if he became ordinary, the world would be full of lone warriors out to destroy it, and she considered Lit too modest because even during the war he kept up a humble front. After he said he had enough of the imperial city, the princess first pouted, then bowed her head sadly. She told him she understood everything, but he realized those were empty words, and meanwhile the princess put her hand on the weapon. Drawing her sword, the girl rushed at Lit Ricard and vowed to do everything in her power to deliver him to the imperial city. After a few moments, Plants had tied and disarmed her, and the other person, not even surprised by this, simply watched her in silence. The princess looked up in admiration, since this was what she had expected from Lit, but he had no idea why she was so happy. Fraud stepped in, saying it was not right to quarrel and offering to greet the girl, while Manhwa gently tried to stop her, thinking it was dangerous. Adela was surprised she had come to return Lit's, but they were still glad to see her, and the man was lost in thought. He decided to ask the princess for a small favor. Hearing this, the girls looked even happier, and her cheeks turned slightly pink. She listened attentively. Needing firewood for the party, they learned a tiger had recently appeared in their forest, so he asked Frau for protection. To be precise, he asked for an escort. In the forest, watch for falling trees. Walking with the girl, Adele wondered why she should do this since she had so little time. In the imperial capital, a little earlier but already too late, Adele learned that lead meant expulsion. She could not believe it, since he had done so much to secure the empire's victory. The servant said some court magicians were unhappy. They said he had been treated far better than he deserved. Adele clutched her fan tightly and supposed they were all jealous of his power. It was a mistake to interfere with the court's affairs, even if it was, let's wish. The knights whispered about the princess breaking the iron fan. A cruel princess knight, all muscle and fury. One furious look from her silenced them. Gathering her hair into a ponytail, the girl told her servant to get transport ready to go after Lit, but the servant apologized that they could not. This weekend, the girl was due to dine with Julian. The meeting would decide her future, so the servant urged her to reconsider. The princess had promised to return in time, yet now walked through the forest with Frau gathering logs, when a girl suddenly turned, looked straight at her, and asked whether she really was Princess Adele. Agreeing, the girl added that she was also an honorary commander in the Empire's 15th Legion. Fraud, surprised and excited, asked whether Adele could be both a princess and a knight at the same time. At first the girl did not understand what had caused the reaction. Then she smiled. Grabbing the stick and waving it, Adele said she might look like that, but was still stylish, if not as stylish as Lit, and Frau clapped happily as she watched this performance. Frau asked whether Lit and the princess were friends. At first, the princess hesitated, then she blushed and said that, in her view, it was much deeper. A comrade in arms, he was the only one who fought by her side and had her back, so she saw their bond as deeper than friendship. And then Frau asked if they were really that close. Once the girl agreed, the child of the flower people said she would be her friend too. Adele looked away sadly. She didn't want to spoil Litz's mood, but she still had to return it because it was her duty. Adele kept replaying in her head someone's words that a girl shouldn't get involved with strangers because she deserves better, and if he likes her, she can do her duty. A sharp scream interrupted the girl. A dead tree flew straight at Fru, who froze in fear in front of it. Realizing she had no time to react, the princess watched Frau reach out her hand as if she could catch the tree. Adele moved quickly and caught the huge trunk flying toward the girl. A little later, Lit and Nami watched in amazement as the wood cracked and cracked. A huge tree lay behind the girls, and they were even more shocked to see Adele break it into logs with her bare hands. The man noted that the girl kept improving her skills after the war ended because she was always hardworking. He watched as his Frau took the twig and admired the princess. It seemed the girl really liked her, and now Adele has an admirer. Encouraged by the princess, Fraud tried with all his might to break the branch but could not. Lit watched, and only hoped that Adele would also like this village. The others were enjoying the delicious wine while Adele sat to the side, quietly watching them. Suddenly, Fru came over and offered a snack. The princess said she had brought her own food, but quickly changed her mind when she learned Lit had made it himself. Carefully, she inspected what they'd given her. It had a lot of fat, but it smelled so good she decided to try it. She took a bite, chewed, and found it very tasty. Frau was glad the girl liked it. The princess thanked Adele for helping earlier. Adele insisted she was only an escort doing her duty, but the princess accepted the apology and gave an awkward smile. Lit sat down beside the girls unexpectedly. The guy asked the girl if living like that was really so great. She looked away, thinking. The princess looked away in embarrassment and agreed, thinking about him since she rarely saw anything like this. Lit admitted he was like her, which made the scenery here seem much more beautiful to him. Adele asked if that came from comparing it to the less picturesque empire. With her head bowed, she apologized, worried his trouble in court was her fault. Some thought it improper for a princess to be near him. She promised she would no longer put up with that kind of stupidity and would do everything she could to make him comfortable. Bowing respectfully, the girl sincerely asked Lit to return to the empire. She realized and said plainly that losing his talent was like losing 100 years of imperial history. Lit then asked whether this was what Her Highness Princess Adele had meant to say. Lifting her head, the girl said she was born a princess and could not become a knight if she stopped doing what helped her empire. The young man apologized but still refused to return to the capital, since he preferred tending the slow-growing plants here, gathering firewood, clearing his mind, and living a relaxed life in nature. Grateful, he thanked Adele for coming to see him, and she was glad to hear it. Blushing, she hid her face in her hands and said she would leave here early tomorrow morning. Vowing never to give up, she promised to return and one day return Lit to the imperial capital. Smiling, the young man agreed, but said it would be after another barbecue. The girl blushed and promised to return as soon as she had settled her affairs. He asked why she was in such a hurry, and she said she had plans she could not miss. Lit stretched and said it was definitely time for the girl to sleep. As he was leaving, she sheepishly added that there was only one house here. Unable to sleep in the same place as the man, the girl showed a royal upbringing, and he could tell she had already thought of something. Deciding to build a guest house, he had it built immediately and then wished the girl good night. Shortly after, the animal the princess had come to was already being untied from the gate. Lit noticed this, and remembering the girl's words, wondered whether she had mentioned the early morning, and why she was leaving so late at night. Before midnight, Adele climbed onto her monster with tired eyes, and Lit, still awake, noticed but did not disturb her. In the forest, a huge cat sat by the lake and drank the purest water. A strange stone stood in front of him, carved with an odd symbol. A little later, back in the imperial capital, the man explained how in Craig's domain they raised taxes to the limit and used debt as a shield for their own interests, because by using people properly they become useful tools. He declared he ruled his lands as he pleased. That was the way of the Craig family. His interlocutor found it interesting and replied that their true skill lay in how they used fools. Climbing into the carriage, the man bade the princess farewell and promised to wait eagerly for Adelio's reply. As the carriage drove away, Adelia's brother watched it and urged her to decide quickly, because the man holds an important post in the empire. He once ruled the domain of Craig. Lying in the bathroom, she stared at the ceiling. His talk of strength, character, and loyalty, and his boastful claims that he was the best and the greatest annoyed her. The village of Togan had been much more fun than here, she remembered. Later in the village, Fraud admitted she wanted to ask for forgiveness, but Lido was more surprised that the girl knew such difficult words than that she decided to say something like that. He asked what was wrong, and she lowered her head in sadness. She admitted saying something hurtful to Adele. Surprised by the rude words she used, the young man sat down and asked what she had said. What remained were words about her sadness that Master Lit was no longer with them, but she could not say anything. Too afraid to speak, she sank deeper into silence. But the young man said Adele would not be against it, so there was nothing to apologize for. He pointed out that you cannot always put everything into words, and that it is better to show your intentions through actions, especially when they involve other people. Fraud said it was too late now that the princess had gone. Lit said not to worry about it. He said he got the news this morning and saw that something had happened just in time. It turned out to be a DL. Joyfully, the princess waved her hands. Realizing she had arrived too early, the girl ran to Lit and begged him to return to the capital. Meanwhile, Navi figured the round trip, even on a high-speed train, would take 8 days. Lit pointed out the princess had left only 7 days earlier. Adele admitted she has a special way to carry him when he gets tired. She carries him on her back while Frau watched from the side as they talked. About to speak to Adele, she was interrupted when he took out flowers and gave them to her with all his heart. Delighted by the gift, the girl grew very embarrassed and, frightened, fell to the ground. "Let's sit across from the princess." He admitted she was fine. She was put to sleep with a finger. The man did it on purpose, knowing Adele tended to overdo things. He asked if she would talk to the princess when she woke, and the girl agreed, full of determination and enthusiasm. The man went to cook dinner and Frau immediately called Navi. Meanwhile, the princess seemed to be having nightmares about her past. The little girl sat by the broken carriage and watched the magical symbol in the sky. Years earlier, after careful preparation and much effort, Edel passed the Order's examination. On her first night in the Imperial Guard, she vowed to live up to that honor. She remembered being a knight, telling people to stay calm because she would protect them. They told her monsters would never come to a place like that a woman could not be a knight, and that she would always be a capricious girl. She remembered Litz's words on the battlefield when he said he would handle the problem himself because the princess had already done so much. Litz recognized her strength, which was exactly what she needed. The situation had changed, and the girl's mind kept replaying her brother's question about how long she planned to play that night now that the war was over. Her brother said he'd had enough and even named her an honorary commander. "A very weak knight?" she asked again, surprised and irritated, and wondered what it all meant. He had found a fine groom for her. That would be a good choice for the princess. Then Adele opened her eyes. Lying in bed in the center of the room, she was surrounded by flowers and plants, with her swords standing beside her. Startled, the princess sat bolt upright when she realized the sun was still high and she had been sleeping. However, she assumed Lit had helped her by using flowers to ease her fatigue. At first, Adele thought she might really want to rest, but then she jumped up and began doing various exercises, deciding it was time to work out. A little later, the princess was already in the forest, gathering herbs for a good workout and collecting firewood before winter arrived. Doubt gnawed at her. She knew she was just running away, and that this was not appropriate for the night. Not returning to the capital would not be a problem, especially since Adele herself did not want to go back, but it left her with mixed feelings, and something about it felt strange to the girl. Someone's gaze on her made her assume it was a monster, but no matter how hard the princess searched, she could not find the creature. Maybe it was just her imagination. Then Frau appeared before the princess and asked whether the girl was all right. She had woken up so early, but Adela said she felt fine now, and Frobri sighed with relief and admitted she was glad to hear it. The princess admitted Frau did not need to worry. She was not going to take Lit today. Blushing, she said she had enjoyed her time in the village of Togan, and that was why she had returned. Honestly, the girl wanted to live here. Fraud hadn't expected those words and called her name in surprise. A sudden tremor shook the whole forest. Adal turned and saw the huge sprouts, realized it was Lith's magic, apologized, and ran back to the village first, leaving Frau alone and full of determination. Household items lay scattered around as a huge cat wrecked everything, targeting Lit's house. To Novian's surprise, the boy asked whether the creature had grown stronger, and the assistant ran an analysis and said she detected an increase in magical power. Targeting this village made no sense, since no meat was being cooked today. Lit had no way to catch him now, and could only get rid of the cat. So he asked the flower people if they had Metabi wine, and they said no. Navi said the behavior is caused by a lack of water. Recently, they have been redirecting some water to deliver berry wine. Lit froze as they realized what was happening. Facing the monster that threatened his house, he realized it was his own fault. Suddenly, he was called out, and Adele came to help, but he asked her not to get rid of the cat. He asked that the residents be saved first, because it was unsafe for them to stay, and with little time the girl decided to follow his order. Dodging the monster's attacks and throwing stones to distract him, the girl managed to grab the flower people. She carried them to safety, came back, and told others to save the rest. The creature before her was clearly an advanced monster. Compared to the enemies they faced earlier, this was already good news. Right in front of the cat, the girl lost her footing and fell, her head spinning and everything swimming before her eyes. It felt like she had been running too long and would have to pay for it, but she still knew she had to protect the others. Frau appeared directly in front of her holding a bucket full of something. Calling Fruz's name in surprise, the girl got no response because Fruz did not even turn around, which made it clear Fruz had something on her mind. She dumped the entire bucket over the cat, and he bared his fangs, ready to attack. Lit and Navi were surprised because they thought the matatabi wine was gone, but it still worked. Adele told Fraud to run and assured her she was fine. The girl refused, saying she did not want to because it was now her turn to protect the princess. A memory suddenly came back to Adele. Adele was sobbing in front of the girl who had saved her life. Telling her to stop crying, she gently stroked her head and said that next time it would be her turn to protect someone, so there was no time for tears. Leaving, she was followed by a boy and warned him not to lie or be lazy. While he tried to assure her he had the monsters under control, it seemed to be Lit, but the princess did not know about it. Adele couldn't believe she had let herself forget this. Lit knew he could not wait any longer because 2 lives were at stake, and he had to protect them. But he froze, holding the seeds tight when he saw something astonishing. Fraud stretched out her arms to protect Adele, who sat behind her. When the cat raised its paw to strike, Adele did not step back and only closed her eyes. Suddenly Adele stood, blocked the monster's paw with one hand as it lunged at them, and even the cat froze while the determined girl looked into its eyes and said she seemed to understand something. She struck the cat back, and it fell immediately. Everyone watching from the side was stunned, even Frau, who was covered in lietus plants. Adele glared at the cat and ordered him to stand. The boys froze, even more bewildered. The princess pressed on and said she was ready to prove who was stronger. She defeated the monster. No one understood anything, and she said she wanted to see what he could do. The girl planned to stay until the cat grew tired. She struck, thinking she was only a girl, only a princess, that it was all a game, and she was weak. With each blow there was more than a desire to save herself. This is anger. She blamed herself for getting swept up in petty squabbles. She must remember she is a knight defending her people. She seized the cat's tail and threw it to the ground, giving it no chance. Tired of being a princess who needed protection, she had just proved to herself she could do more. Everyone froze in surprise when the monster who lost the fight lay motionless beside the princess. And only Lid understood that despite Adele saying it was dangerous, no one could beat her in close combat. She was clearly stronger than anyone. Soon after, the flower people carried the cat back to the eastern mountains, and Frau summoned her courage, approached Adele and apologized, surprising the princess. Fraud admitted she thought Adele would take Master Lit and was rude to her, but the princess, not understanding what was being said, looked away. After a moment's thought, she looked at Frau and said they were comrades in arms. Frau agreed, and now she and the princess were definitely comrades. After an awkward silence, Adele said she was glad to meet Frau, and that they really needed to do something about the girl still addressing her so respectfully. Lit watched Frau and Adele laughing off to the side, felt the girl had spoken so formally she could no longer do otherwise, and still thought Frau was a good girl. He announced it was time for dinner before cleaning and that he planned to use his special seasoning today, then asked where the pots and pans were kept. This was exactly what the tiger had come for. Lit asked the flower people if they knew anything about it. Navi explained it to him. Navi asked him never to serve his own spices to people again. That morning, once the sun had risen, the princess got ready to go home. Fraud told her to be careful, and Adele personally thanked her for her help. Pausing briefly, the girl turned to the young man, who immediately said he would not go to the capital, but she wanted to say something else. Bowing respectfully, she thanked Lit again for his service to the Romancia Empire during the last 100-year war against the demons and asked him to forgive her many disrespectful actions in Togan village. She admitted she knew he would not be happy in the imperial capital, and that she, who had driven him out, had the audacity to come here. It was all foolishness born of her own weakness and naivety. Even so, she did not want to leave without saying goodbye. Lit froze at Adele's words. He apologized, and she told him she understood everything. After that, she decided to say goodbye to him, but only for now. From now on, she would follow only her own path, she declared confidently, and wished the master good luck. He smiled and thanked the girl, saying that if she got tired, she could always come to them to rest. They would be glad to see her. At first, the girl smiled back. Tears filled her eyes, and she promised she would definitely visit them often. He nodded in approval. With her eyes swollen from tears, the princess wished everyone a good day. She ran off to the empire. Determined, she continued the fight. Adele always faces what even Lit can't bear. The man said the princess is very strong and always has been. Determined, the young man knew he could no longer run away. His duty was to protect the village. Facing a tiger and a water shortage, he knew he had to act fast, and he looked toward the mountain to see what was happening there. Lit saw Frau watching Adele thoughtfully as she drove away. He then suggested she go for a walk. Speaking to him with equal respect, the girl tried to refuse politely. Understanding everything, he said he would still have business in the city next time and asked if Fraud would like to go with him. Later in the Empire, in Craig's domain, Julian's servant arrived and said he had news from Princess Adelia, asked whether she had consented to the marriage, and added that she had kept him waiting longer than usual. The servant said that, in short, the reply was a refusal, and it was written that way, even in capital letters. The princess had still not reached the Empire, resting somewhere in lands not far from the village of Togan. Stretching, the girl watched the bright sunrise and realized it was time to start living. Plantings of berries, red berries, blackberries, grapes, potatoes, and turnips that need little water, along with guest cottages, were pleasing to the eye. Pleased with himself, Lit wiped the sweat from his brow after planting the tree. He transplanted his mysterious seedling X into the soil. It began as a seed, grew into a sprout, and then a seedling, and planting it showed steady growth that made him very happy. A little nervous about the mystery plant, he said out loud that he hoped it would grow well. Navi saw that this month's income from red berries, juice, the harvest, and everything else far exceeded what he earned as a court mage, so Togan village had gotten off to a very good start. They had a great harvest, but it hasn't rained at all since Lith arrived, so a water shortage is a real concern, and it's strange, yet the plants are still growing so fast Lith can't keep up. The water problem still had to be solved immediately, so they went to the city to get supplies while exploring the surrounding area. Frau spoke to her mother, who asked the girl to be careful, but Frau assured her mother she would be fine. The girl threw on a cloak and grabbed a dictionary. She apologized for taking so long, but Lit said he had just finished getting ready and suggested they walk a short way to the Transport Guild meeting place. Frau agreed, and the young man said he had not been in the city for a long time, so they set off. Soon they were in the carriage. Its owner recognized him and said she was glad to see him so healthy. A man greeted Mel and said she looked well. Frau repeated her question about the girl's name, and Lit then assured her she did not need to worry because Mel was a member of the Transport Guild, which was also connected to Mia. The girl said Lit was a magnet for girls, and the guy nervously told Mel not to talk nonsense, especially in front of Frau, laughing. She added they would arrive only tomorrow morning and advised them to rest. Navi and Lit watched Frau flip through her dictionary. The assistant noticed the girl looked worried. He explained that Adele's departure had weakened her sense of the outside world, so he planned to give the girl a gentle push while avoiding unnecessary risks. The boys finally arrived, and Mel greeted them while reminding them about the meeting that evening. They suggested getting a map first, but Fraud had grown even more nervous, which Navi also noticed, and the man calmed both girls and suggested they go. As they walked through the city, the girl grew frightened by the passing people and seemed ready to cry when suddenly Lit called her. At the flower shop, the salesman greeted them cheerfully, and Lit realized there were far more choices than he expected. Pointing to the plant, he told the girl it was fragrant. Its scent was so good it became a popular alternative to perfume, and Frau also noticed the pleasant aroma. The interested man told the girl about various plants, including grapevines and elastic ivy that can even be woven into rope. The seller noted that Lit is very knowledgeable about plants and suggested going inside. Seeing an unusual plant, the man looked surprised and asked the seller what it was, since he had never seen anything like it. The seller explained that some of those plants do not grow in the city, including the greenhouse lily that interested Lita. The woman watching it laughed quietly. Then the man turned to her and asked if she felt any calmer. Turning to Fraud, he said the world was not as bad as it seemed, though he had only recently learned that. Smiling, the girl said she felt the same. The boy spotted a flower glowing in the dark and decided they would definitely take it. Frau asked to take the bag and the young man agreed. He thanked the girl for agreeing to go with him, and she solemnly promised to take good care of her new bag. As the meeting time approached, Navi noticed someone had been following them since the morning, and the man asked if there were any workarounds. Navi drew a map and said to turn right after 300 meters, then left after 50 meters. Lit grabbed Frau by the shoulders and said they needed to hurry. They were not the only ones who sped up. Lit asked Navi for a report, and she said the enemy was 50 meters away. Lit and Frau turned the corner, and when the pursuers reached it, they found no one, only grass already growing beneath their feet. The net flew onto the pursuers' heads and settled while his companion watched from above, hoping to see who had followed them all day. And to their surprise, it was Manhwa with a girl they did not know. Mia apologized to Lit for what happened and said the girl is Dias from the Artist Guild, the goddess of the brush, who was asked to draw the bottle labels because, although she is not reserved, she is very good. She said she could not draw the label until she saw a suitable model, and Manhwa admitted she preferred interviewing in person, which made the young man breathe a sigh of relief. Diaz said she was ready to draw but asked Fraud to remove her hood. The girl was surprised, and Lita grew even angrier. He said the girl would not do it, and Diaz added that since the portrait for the label had to be linked to the flower people, if Fraud did not take it, the artist would not paint it, so she left the choice to them. Frau threw back her hood and said that because Diaz was a friend of their friends and smelled good, she could probably be trusted. Mesmerized by the girl's beauty, Diaz asked her to sit and smile so Diaz could draw. Frau forced a smile, but Lit immediately said she was wrong. He told the girl to remember the shop they were in. Today she remembered her new bag and the beautiful flowers, and a sincere smile lit her face. Diaz continued drawing while the man watched her. Frau remembered standing in front of the mirror with the new bag Lit had bought. Diaz suddenly set down her pencil. The drawing was finished. It showed Frau blushing slightly, smiling gently with her eyes closed. After finishing work, she found the tired cats already asleep in each other's arms. The Frauenlitzes were pleased with the work and thanked Diaz for her help. She admitted she had wanted to meet a representative of the flower people ever since she read a book as a child, and she sincerely thanked them for the chance. The boys were about to leave and said they were looking forward to seeing the finished bottles, and Diaz added she had a special edition for them. Returning to the village of Togan, Let thanked Froggen for agreeing to go to the city with him and said she had a lot of fun. Clenching her fists, she said they should definitely go back there, and the man replied they would definitely go for another walk. After Frau fell asleep, Lit asked Navi to report the situation, and the girl appeared and said she was reporting. She resurveyed the area from the village of Togan to the city within a 1-kilometer radius, improving the map's accuracy. About 20 kilometers from the city, the landscape gradually becomes less green. 30 kilometers away, all the greenery is gone. Navi explained that only a specific radius around the village has died, which is very unnatural. The city showed no signs of water shortages, so the problem was confined to their vicinity. Lit remembered the shop owner telling him today that the owner's great-grandfather had said the area used to be surrounded by greenery, but the water suddenly vanished as if it avoided the land. Navi pointed out the sea was 30 kilometers west of the village. The man said even his magic could not reach that far, and Lit added he had stocked up on everything he needed and would try every possible method. 1 month later in the imperial capital, the cats celebrated their victory. Demand grew as not only bottles with Frau but also other labels became very popular and sales rose. Suggesting they release a couple more batches of different types, she noted the label business made her so happy she felt they were very lucky with the idea. The man standing to the side watched her and ordered his servant to follow this cat. A secret council met in the capital to discuss Lif. It had been 6 months since Recall's departure, and they saw no signs of concern. No one knew where he was, and his trail vanished almost immediately, which made sense because he was skilled at this. He keeps to himself and does not seek wealth. People who chase money and fame are easier to control, and this hero frightened them. Still, they chose to leave him alone. With the war won, their empire no longer needs heroes, and since he causes no trouble, they can keep him. Then one man asked about his research, but because it was about plants, no one was interested, and a council member wanted the princess to become a bit more ordinary. Nearby, the soldiers were talking among themselves about the princess invading the guild district. They figured she was angry after the war, but that did not explain why she would return to that district. They concluded it was most likely recalled again, since she kept searching for him. Meanwhile, the girl herself was in the closed archives. Darting along the cabinets and shelves, she carried a lantern like a dancer in the dark. Wearing a light dress and heels, the girl smiled while searching for the papers she needed, even though removing them was strictly forbidden. Lit asked her to help him find some information, and although she usually did not go to the library, today was a special occasion. So far, the only thing she had noticed was the thick layer of dust. At last, the girl found the book she needed. It was a record of Abigail the Collector's purchases of magical artifacts. Taking out the book, she began to study it. Most of the magical artifacts in the Forbidden Archives were said to have been bought by this man. Flipping through the years and months, she came across a record showing seeds purchased on July 17, 2017. The record shocked her. A week later in the village of Togan, he stomped the ground angrily, unsure where all the water had gone. It had been a month since he went to the city. During that time, he tried several ways to fix the water shortage, but none worked. Summer had arrived and there was still no water. He knew this could not continue. Adele went up to the tired man, thanked him for his work, and set a tray of food down. Setting the food before the boy, she told him rest was also important, and brought him chicken soup and ham. The hungry young man then realized it was already noon. Grateful, he thanked the princess and apologized for making her work during her vacation. She said it was no problem. He said the dish was, as always, delicious. Her chicken dishes were simply magnificent, though Lit had never seen her cook anything else. The girl began by telling him about the information he had asked her to find, and he immediately asked what she had discovered. She said she had found it in the capital's library and, pointing to the sprout, asked if it was that mysterious tree. The princess touched the leaves carefully, but a noise behind the boys made them immediately turn to see what had happened. Frau ran over and said a tiger had come up to them and was standing behind her. The man was surprised because after Adele had chased it off, it had not come back to them. Lit could no longer allow him to do whatever he wanted, so he bought special seeds to trap monsters in the city. Navi flew in and apologized, saying he had somehow not been noticed. Standing up, the princess told Lit to stop and walk toward them. Stopping before the tiger, she asked if he wanted to say something. Adele locked eyes with the huge cat in silence. The animal lowered its head to the girl's feet. Everyone fell silent in amazement when the princess realized the tiger's request, and she turned to tell them that this tiger wanted them to follow him. Lit, drenched in sweat, paused to catch his breath. The boys followed the tiger up the mountain, unsure where he was taking them. They had been in the eastern mountains for 2 hours. Navi reminded them that the master was walking too slowly. Frau urged them not to despair, but Adele interrupted to say they had arrived. Lit was surprised to find nothing there, so he asked if the princess really understood this tiger, and she told the girls she only understood it a little, which suggested it might be some kind of ability of hers. Everything suddenly began to shake. The flowers and Frau's hair started to bloom, and Navi reported a magical reaction ahead, saying a descendant of magic was coming toward them. The trees in front of the company suddenly seemed to move aside and form an arch. A road cut through the forest and led straight to the lake where that same magic stone stood. Lit was surprised a place like that had existed in the mountains all along. Navi said the air itself was full of magic. The girl said the magic in the air increases the power of magical creatures. Adelia added that this apparently activated Frau's flowers, making it the perfect place to view them. Frau only asked what it was. The princess said it meant people enjoying the beauty of flowers and spending time together, and the girl found it interesting but asked that it not be done to her. Lit grew worried because the secret area was likely blocked, so it made sense that navigation couldn't find it, and the man found the whole thing very exciting. You examined the stone slab closely. The pattern seemed familiar to him. Looking around, he realized he was in a very ancient place. The tiger climbing the rock was his guardian. Despite trying several spells, the young man got no response from the stone slab. Navi said the stream carried a faint but pure magical energy, so the water would benefit both plants and people. The stream is too small and shallow to solve the water problem in Token Village. Even if used, it would only be a temporary fix and would dry up quickly. Navi decided it was impossible to solve the village's water problem and that building a channel would be difficult even for Elit. The guy agreed, clearly upset. When he asked about the stone slab, the girl said her database had no information on it and warned it might be an entrance to a dungeon with monsters, so activating it without preparation would be dangerous. Sitting down, he told her the pattern definitely felt familiar. Even if it was a dungeon, he could handle it and was ready to seize any opportunity. Lit was upset, but he calmed himself and called Frau and Adele because it was getting dark and it was time to go home. That was enough for today. He took a sample of the water, hoping it would help solve the water problem. They had found nothing so far. Frau offered to go with Lit even in the dark, but he thanked her, refused, and suggested they go home early. It was time to throw a welcome party for their new friend. When the boys returned to the village of Togan with the tiger, the flower people were delighted to see him. Lit watched from the side and froze. The big cat seemed very calm to him. Then he turned to Adele and asked what the tiger's name was. She said his name was Newsy, and that he was the guardian of the forest. The princess said he had made it clear he wanted to be her pet, so she named him. The man said Adele had given him a typically straightforward name. Everyone was pleased with their new friend, and the young man patted him and said he was glad to meet him. A satisfied tiger licked the man as a greeting, but the man, covered in the huge cat's drool, did not appreciate the gesture. Navi and the young man watched the fun from the sidelines, and the girl noticed it had become even livelier here. Monma and the others joined them without him noticing, and as the village elder, he was only glad to have guests. Noticing Lit's face had grown serious again, Navi asked if he was still thinking about the water problem. Stretching wearily, the man agreed and spoke aloud about what else he could try. Adele approached them and asked if Lit had a minute to continue the conversation about what she had learned. The man jumped up as if he'd already forgotten. He asked if she had found out anything about the mysterious tree and, visibly moved, waited for her answer. The girl said this is a world tree, and in her opinion, it is an ash tree. Lit was shocked that the world would treat this baby that way. Adele had only heard of him in children's fairy tales. Long ago, at the center of the world, stood the world tree. Spirits sang and danced in the sky, pure winds blew, and crystal waters flowed. All living things were wrapped in mana, and the world was full of abundance and happiness. One day, the world tree vanished. Mana slowly drained from the air, the spirits faded, and only grief and strife remained. That was the legend of the world tree, and in their time, only members of the royal family knew of it. Adelia said that, based on what she was told, the seed was silver, and the sprout glowed with rainbow light, exactly as the legend described. Litz said he was growing a monocotyledonous plant, and that the world tree was a dicotyledonous ash. But there were no signs it was a monocotyledonous plant, which would be impossible for a normal plant. The man assumed it was mimicry, but that wasn't the whole story. Collector Abigail buys many suspicious items in different countries, and as a court magician, one item on his shopping list was especially interesting. Convinced the seed was fake, he left it with the other junk in the room. Lit was surprised by the princess's information-gathering skills, but the girl said they were the ones to admire. Here in Togan village, thanks to him, a new world tree appeared for the first time in several thousand years. The boy screamed in horror, knowing the tree would draw too much attention to their village, and he cursed himself for being too curious. Then he realized that if they did not fix the water shortage, the world tree could die, and while everyone else seemed happy, he alone felt worried. Sitting cross-legged, Lit ran through the problems. No water, a strange stream, a strange monument, and now the world tree. The problems kept getting bigger. Slapping his face, Lit forced himself to stop panicking because he was the village head. The man asked Navi to take a water sample from the stream and analyze it, and the girl asked why they were in such a rush, but he said he wanted to activate the monument as soon as possible because they needed any clue. The monument and the stream would be the key to solving the water shortage. Lit was certain. Monma suddenly approached Lit and asked if they wanted a drink. The man said the girl was terribly drunk. Another cat pushed her away and told her to go on her way. Manma muttered under her breath that she felt offended when she left. The man looked awkward, but Mia stayed with Lit and asked if he was free. The young man apologized that he had something to do. Upset but understanding, The girl took in the man's words and looked away sadly. Lit still said he would find time to talk to Mia. Manhwa suddenly spoke, holding a jar of mountain water and urgently saying it was important because it would help her think clearly, and then Lit shouted that the water must not be drunk, which scared the cat. She fell gracefully and dumped all that water onto the world tree. Frozen with horror, Lit watched the water trickle down the tree, and they didn't even have time to analyze it. The next morning, a worried friend asked if everything was okay, since they hadn't slept at all. The man sat in front of the tree wrapped in a blanket all night, wished the girl good morning, and said he was worried about the baby, so he was looking after him. The man still believed everything was fine, but he couldn't be ignored, and then Navi appeared. The girl said she would look after him so Lit could sleep. The man wanted to refuse but stopped when he met Navi's serious gaze. Leaning over the head man, she warned him he was overthinking, reminded him she had already agreed to help, then asked sternly if he understood, and he replied sharply that he did. Lit thanked Navi and asked Rao to handle the other fields, and the girl assured him she could take care of everything in the best possible way. As he lay on his bed, he remembered being exhausted after yesterday's hike in the mountains, and was very interested in what Mia wanted to talk to him about. He decided then that he would definitely ask her later. Upset, the cats are driving back to town. Manhwa couldn't believe she had done it and knew Lit would definitely be angry. Noticing Mia was sad, the girl asked what happened, and Mia said she had wanted to ask Glit for advice, but couldn't. 4 days ago, something significant happened in the Empire's capital. Mia was resting, pleased to have won the economic war and confident the largest independent guild could wait for her. A man suddenly approached the cat and noticed she seemed fine. He said he was a member of the Maiden's Cup Guild, which researched illegal substances. The girl took off her glasses and was surprised that this guild is the leader among researchers, so I offered the man a seat and he thanked her and gave her a gift. He said they learned a red berry merchant had suddenly appeared in the autonomous region, and his goods were selling fast. Mia said it was all thanks to the drug company she had managed to sign a contract with, and to luck, and the man replied that she should not be too modest. Recognizing the request is difficult, the old man asks for help. She is surprised to learn we're talking about 100 boxes instead of baskets. The old man points to a document showing an order for 100 boxes, and that each box equals 10 baskets. Manhwa realizes this means 1,000 baskets, 10 times the normal amount. After she apologizes for the misunderstanding, the old man says it is now too late to cancel the order. The old man says they have already prepared everything needed to transport the goods and warns that if the girl cannot provide what is required, they may lose trust in her. He threatens the Heroes Guild with a very uncertain future. The old man says he expects the goods within 10 days. She adds that she was drunk once and spilled the water, but it was not her fault. He asks how much time remains before the deadline, and the girl says there are only 6 days left. The hero decides to return to the village for Mr. Rit's help. The heroine doubts you can always rely on the master because he has his own affairs. She believes the master can help this time, but Manhwa says Togan village cannot prepare the needed red berries and does not have enough water. The heroine argues for compiling a collection of stories about the village of Togan. She believes that if she hadn't drunk then, she could have prevented the current problem. A girl suggests trying a special donut she made. Rit realizes a visitor from the village of Togan has arrived, and the hero asks if they have plans for today. Manhwa regrets what happened recently. She also admits she causes problems. The hero notices the tree is fine but wonders why it looks that way. The girl asks for help to show a notebook. Rith studies the notebook of spells for releasing, closing, and other uses and finds it well organized and easy to read. Men must say she needs to collect 900 baskets of red berries. Rit is surprised and asks what this has to do with the monument. The girl claims she is a journalist and knows where to find information on how to get the required berries. Noticing the girl's disheveled hair and bruises under her eyes, the hero says decisively they will go at once for information and that he will handle the world tree himself. Manhwa reacts with surprise and asks how this happened. He also wonders whether another key besides the spell might be needed, and Rit asks how many days remain, and the girl replies they have 4 days left. After accounting for travel time, the heroes realize they have only 3 days left. Rit concludes from what he's heard that Mia is clearly innocent and says the whole situation is a scam. The man must imply that someone deliberately set a trap for Mia. The hero recalls a similar incident in Gauntland, says he cannot tolerate such things, and mentions it. She agrees that these situations happen everywhere and says that because of them, she met Mr. Rita and Mia, which makes her happy. They receive notices saying they act like criminals just as businessmen do. Rit recommends identifying the opponent's weaknesses. Manhwa asks for permission to go home, saying she must return immediately. The heroine says she can handle the situation on her own and that she is a journalist. Holding an object, the girl will throw it at him if the situation becomes dangerous, Rit says. The hero, pleased, says he always knew she was an excellent reporter. Manhwa suggests lowering the price the next day, but the merchant refuses to change his mind. The heroine firmly says she will certainly catch the bad guys by the tail and there are only 3 days left. Manhwa reads a report about a man named Paral who met with Mia. The report says he is a big shot in the Cup Guild. She explains there is a war between factions within the Winged Handle Guild, and says Purell leads the faction that favors materialism. The man asks whether Manhwa is tired of the crazy stories, and the girl rejects the claim that the stories are crazy, saying she is not tired of them. Manhwa asks the man if he knows anything about the woman. Joe says Pearl has too many security restrictions. Joe says Perel visits bars 5 days a week. In the neighboring town, there's a good place. Manhwa notices Perel nearby. Pearl of the Cup Guild is also attending the meeting. The heroine sees that the man beside him is clearly from the Winemakers Guild. Introducing herself as Remy, she asks the other girl if this is her first time here. The heroine confirms this is Remy's first time here and notes that she's very fluffy. Manhwa can't figure out why those visitors are always so noisy. Remy notices these visitors were once sullen. Taken aback by the word gloomy, the heroine watches Remy point to a man from the Winemakers Guild. Remy notices that wines with cats on the label have become popular lately. Manhwa suggests customers may be trying to get rid of a competitor because Mia was deceived about her order. Another heroine tells them not to discuss clients. Mia says it's probably because both are beastmen. The heroine sees many beastmen here. The old man says he'll leave soon. Manhwa asks what the bar patrons are talking about. The heroine remembers Perel stayed at this inn and wonders why he went to the neighboring city when the inn specializes in beastmen. Manhwa decides to gather evidence against Perel and use it to blackmail him. 6 years ago, the hero complained about how hard it was to move cargo from the imperial capital. The hero is surprised when Mia leaves during the workday, and she is happy to learn Manhwa is alive. Mia proudly displays her special donuts and invites others to try them. Noticing his hearty appetite, the heroine suggests they go to the hospital together. Mia happily announces her stall is finally open. Mia says this is a step toward her dream, then asks the girl whether she has one. Mama admits she ran away when things got too hard. Nia admires the heroine and calls her magnificent. You can't stop there, the heroine says, because escape is only the beginning. Escaping, she notes, was a great achievement. Manhwa is surprised to be told she's great, but Mia confirms it and adds that she's really cool. Mia says she wants to be very rich. The heroine asks what Mia will do when she gets rich. Manhwa orders the person to stop and return what they took. The girl is surprised that the heroine figured out the man had run away. Manhwa also notes that she saw the man in the newspaper ads. Mia suggests Manhwa should become a journalist. She says this is now the heroine's new dream. People praise the heroine for her character and talent as a journalist. The hero notices the man has left the hotel. The old man realizes he is late. The hero thanks him for making time to visit them. She whispers that cats are like liquid. The man reports that the South is quiet. The old man urges them to get to work now because he is tired. They have received high-quality goods to buy. He says the elegant beast girls arrived straight from the Empire's capital. Realizing how serious it is, the heroine publishes that trading creatures are strictly prohibited on the southern continent and calls the trader a devil. Perel asks why the hero has so many customers. The hero says those goods are very popular across the Empire. He asks about the red berries, and the other character confirms they were cornered, as he said earlier. The old man says the Winemakers Guild is helping him. He reminds the man that this is not an empire where they can deal with everyone in a barbaric way. The merchant thanks the old man for his help. Someone went to great lengths to destroy the supplier of the red berries. The hero assumes someone from the imperial capital organized it and wants to know who. Mama is also surprised that Mia is their target, and the heroine says the red berry supply has been cut by crop failure and bad weather. A passerby spots Manhwa and asks why she is there. Manhwa felt scared when she saw a man holding a knife. The man thinks it is a rat, but the merchant denies that and says it is an insect. The heroine says she nearly died. Irritated, another character says they don't like insects. Now the heroine decides that escaping is the main priority. Manhwa says he will not open the door even though the key fits. Using her head, the girl tries to open the door and rolls out. Surprised, the man notices that the door should only open inwards. Realizing the girl is from the Information Guild, Perel decides they must act quickly to catch her. The merchant insists on leaving and will not help the village with its problems. She also says he buys beastmen from the Empire and sells them on the southern continent. And the heroine is surprised, unable to understand why a man would team up with the Emperor to deal with the red berries. The girl realizes she has reached the limit of her strength. The hero vows not to run away again. Manhwa calls on her special talisman. The old man says one rat won't cause any problems, but warns that tomorrow there will be nothing left of this place. Rin says it gives him chills. At the Perella mansion on delivery day, Manhwa arrived. Ms. Manhwa introduces herself as a member of the Information Guild. The heroine tells Perel they plan to publish another article today. The article reveals that Perel, a leader of the Maiden's Cup Guild, has been meeting secretly with a mysterious man from the Empire. Manhwa says that besides creature trading and market manipulation, there may be espionage on behalf of the Empire. I'll ask whether this is a new comedy column, and she notes that the Information Guild reports only the truth. The heroine says she heard the Emperor owns a restaurant in this city. Manhwa says the guild artist did a great job creating an accurate portrait. She adds he was identified yesterday, and the heroine notes the Emperor was at the port planning to board a ship bound for the imperial capital tomorrow. She acknowledges they still lack direct evidence, but it is true. The girl says they'll have evidence soon. She suggests questioning the lab set company's employees or the 3 beastmen brought in yesterday. He thought problems came only from idiots. The old man says he is disappointed that there are many fools in the South. He notes the store has already burned down and no employees remain. She adds that they run well, but do not always think, and Manhwa notes the Information Guild is keeping order in this area. Perel points out that if the heroine needed nothing, she would already have published the article. The girl confirms they understood the core of the situation and says they are satisfied. In Gauntland, the heroine says the contract has absolute power. She offers to sign the document and guarantees that all articles will be burned. Perel refuses the demand, saying it is impossible for him and that people like them can easily get rid of one stupid cat. Manhwa says this is why they cling to the Empire's power, adding that the guilds hold enormous sway in the region, and even the very wealthy cannot oppose them. The heroine turns to the leader of the Maiden's Cup Guild, reminding him that he already knows the situation well. The girl says the gilded winged hand of information is no weaker than their guild and warns against underestimating the situation. She gives you a choice. Sign the contract or spend the rest of your life in prison. The guild leader says firmly he will leave immediately. The heroine sees a large crowd in the street and a patrol squad nearby. Manhwa reminds everyone that she kept her promise and destroyed her article as agreed. She claimed an unknown person had used her sketches and published the article under his own name, taking all the credit. Police approach Perel and ask to speak with him. The heroine decides to go buy donuts. Mia spots a new stores on Main Street in a prime spot, and many wonderful new employees. The heroine says they apologized to her and admitted making a mistake when placing the order. Mama is surprised and says she doesn't understand anything, but clearly has talent. She notices the situation has suddenly worsened. Mia can't believe how much the store has worsened the situation. The heroine suggests trying something new and reassures everyone they do not need to worry. Knowing what sign she wants, Mia orders one from the Artists Guild. The heroine realizes the new place needs a new name. Mia says they are starting a new journey toward their dream, but notes the name New Journey is too long for the store. Happily, the heroine says that wealth is coming closer. Mia argues success is also a talent, and stresses that their destiny depends on themselves. Manhwa says she wants to try to become a journalist and asks permission to stay a little longer. Mia says she is always happy to help her friends. The heroine promises she will definitely repay the debt someday. The heroine will wait as long as necessary. The technician says that here you can buy wine and other products made in the village of Togan, which was mentioned earlier. Also mentioned that the article's title is New Journey from Gauntland Main Street 1-3. By Manhwa artist Diaz. The hero says the heroine forced Peral to give up the land and assets so Mia could keep following orders. Mama says it's an eye for an eye and blames Perel for starting it all. For now, she will not tell anyone about the link between the Imperial spy and the red berries to avoid upsetting Mr. Rit further. Rit is relieved that everything was resolved without casualties and asks for praise for her good work. The girl says she doesn't know when he noticed it and that the scar no longer hurts. Written notes said she could cope with the situation, and the heroine is pleased but asks that Mia not be told. Now the heroine says it's her turn to help others. Manhwa researched ancient farming methods and says she studied old documents about spirits. The heroine says she has uncovered the true nature of these ruins. The merchant points out that without wars, the development of magic will be delayed by 100 years. The hero points out that no one noticed the documents were fake. He says he has other priorities right now and needs to wait until things settle. In the article, Manhwa wrote that she used plant magic, and the merchant adds that she hasn't heard of it in a long time. The hero reports the invading hero is hiding in the south. She says she doesn't understand what's happening. The box won't open, and Manhwa says magic should have worked. The girl points to the dungeon of the water-controlling monster. RIT doubts the data's accuracy. The guild member says his organization has confirmed it. The hero fears the dungeon won't open and assumes they are missing something needed to gain access. Mia suggests taking a break to eat, says tea clears the mind of unnecessary thoughts, and though the food is delicious, she would prefer wine to tea. The hero warns it is hot now and everyone must be careful with hydration, especially the beast cats. Explaining that their region lies at a lower latitude than the Empire, she says the climate is dry and warm and summer has just begun. The heroes are concerned the area has been in drought for 4 months and the water shortage is still unresolved. Mia notices the pond's water level hasn't dropped despite the long drought. The heroes notice the pond's water level has not changed despite the sun shining all day. The hero notices a strange effect on the pond. Rit suggests the pond and the monument are linked in some way. Mia's business is booming, he reports, but water shortages could dry up supplies, and the red berries needed for healing are starting to run out. The hero suggests Nabi punch a hole in the ground to open a passage into the dungeon to solve the water problem. Nabi warns against the action, saying it is dangerous and its consequences are unpredictable. Confidently, the heroine says they have another idea, can change the location, and offers to discuss the situation with the others. Rit makes clear he is determined to protect their homeland and will seize even the smallest chance to do so. The heroes agree to act only as a group and begin the operation tomorrow morning. Rit says he will have no choice and admits his options are limited by the teams. The hero does not know where he is. Rit spots a girl ahead of him. Asking the young man his name, she hears that it is Rit. Meet the group of heroes: Nabi, Mama, Mia, Adele, Nosy, the Flower People, and Frau. The hero vows to do anything to protect their homeland. He admits he does not want to leave the village of Togan because he feels he has already put down roots there. She says she will get a name only when she is older, and the hero asks her name. Understanding the situation, the hero says he will think of a name for her. Smiling, he stresses that the world tree needs the most beautiful name. The girl gently lays a hand on the hero's head. The hero says Nabi's name in surprise as he recognizes the girl. The heroine turns to Mr. Rit and tells him that the emergency activation has begun. Rit is named benefactor of the world tree and gains mastery of both the depth and the lightness of all things. Mia asks Rita if he is okay. Rit reassures the hero that everything is fine and says it has been 10 years since the last event. He insists on going to the monument. Manhwa asks to join him, and Nebi warns it will be dangerous there. The heroine says Frau knows the mountains well and will offer to guide them. Heroes tap into the skill, depth, and lightness of all things as they prepare to begin the task. Manhwa is instructed to cast a spell. The one titled Benefactor of the World Tree deactivated the special barrier, but the hero asked in surprise what kind of piece that was. The hero tries to figure out which piece he missed. Rit spots a powerful whirlpool forming a massive funnel, pulling in water and carving a deep hole. He also notes that this place where Nabi's body was found had the same architecture and that he knows it is not a dungeon. The heroes spot a majestic temple, the temple of the spirit dedicated to Undine. Manhwa says the temple looks beautiful. The holder of the title Benefactor of the World Tree deactivated the special barrier, opening the way for the heroes. The Temple of Undine opens before a group of heroes. The heroes spot a passage leading down, but the temple entrance is deep and dark. Rit offers to go down alone, but the others insist they will go together. Nama says enthusiastically that their story will go down in history, and Frau is determined not to let them down. The hero tells the group to follow him and cautions them not to stray too far. A faint tremor runs through the ground. The girl notices it, and Rit is grateful for the moonlight lighting the path. Frau feels afraid because no one is here. Manhwa laughs the day away, and Rit asks Manhwa if she is afraid. Rit points out the moss's bright glow and says the deeper they go, the more kinds they find. The hero sees it's just a crab, and Frau says Manhwa smells of sun and ink. He points to the altar at the center of the room. Another hero reports a response at the center of the altar. The heroes conclude the altar was probably used to worship spirits. The heroes realize someone is inviting them inside. Rit points out that the plants are growing faster and that the water level has not changed. Asked how much water they took, the hero explains that the magical water replenishes itself, even if they take only a little. The hero says firmly that he must dive. Rit is unsure if this is symbiosis or parasitism and wants to study it further. The hero thanks Frau for letting him take some leaves to strengthen the effect, and Frau agrees, saying everything will be fine. Rit suggests we add glowing moss. Nebi confirms the vitals are normal and everything is ready, saying the flower people's sunbathing inspired his decision. He calls the device a herbal balloon and says a little light can make enough oxygen for them to breathe underwater. Rit asks the heroes if they believe him. The girl says the master simply cannot think of good names. Manhwa tells Fraud she is too soft. Rit asks if she will really go with them. The heroine admits she is afraid of water. The hero suggests Frau wait here, but she looks worried and hesitates to stay alone. Rit tells her the red flower will show whether they return. If it withers, they will not return, so he asks her to stay in the village and write a letter to Adele. Rit says she'll be their backup, and the heroine agrees to take on this important task. The hero gets ready to set out on a journey. Frau asks why Manhwa is not going with them. The girl wishes the heroes good luck. The hero uses the research skill. The heroes notice the glowing moss makes the cave brighter, improving their visibility even though they are not in a temple. Rit sees Manhwa is fine. The hero asks where to go next. Nabi reports the mana in the water is causing interference that makes movement difficult and warns the others to be careful. Protecting Manhwa is the top priority now, the heroine says. Observing the many underwater plants, the hero suggests they may be linked to the mana in the water. Rit is surprised some plant species are new to him and explains that plant magic here blends water and earth magic, saying they are interesting to study. The hero is amazed by how much he is learning about the world, especially about algae, and decides he will definitely study them. A sudden, powerful magical pulse alerts the heroes that something is approaching at high speed. Rit notices how pleasant the water feels and says it is very beautiful. Fraud once again mistakenly called the hero Sir and apologized for not practicing human speech. Flower people say they can share their thoughts directly. Mama is wondering if she's willing to take risks for her work. Fraul dreams of traveling the world every day and wants to know how to gain the power to protect everyone, and also asks how to become like Rit. The hero notices the view looks like a starry sky. Frau wants to go back there, and the girl says the sky she saw earlier is her favorite. Suddenly the heroine hears footsteps and becomes anxious, fearing she cannot call for help. A terrifying creature looms, its mouth open to reveal a toothy maw. Nabi starts to analyze the situation. Rit warns the others that dangers surround them. Fishmen emerge in front of the heroes. Surprised, the hero says he sees fishermen. He suspects they have been here all along and notices the fishmen look a bit like someone. A young man says that since he arrived on the southern continent, he has kept encountering new and unusual things. He asks Nebi what is happening, since he did not notice anything. Nabi says everyone should hold the herbal balloon firmly for safety. The heroine admits she was scared when someone spoke out of her mouth. The heroes see no signs of aggression nearby and consider whether the creatures are crying or dancing, and they spot new activity. Freo, sitting on a horse, calls Rita. The heroes talk about an unusual horse-like creature. Franz appears riding the creature, surprising the other heroes. Rit spots the creature's sparkling eyes and the barnacles on its hooves, noting these unusual features. They stop searching when they discover a kelp bee, a unique creature that blends the traits of a horse with those of a water spirit. Nabi asks Frau whether she understands the master, and Frau confirms she does. The heroes notice Frau using sign language to communicate with the creatures. Frau says she's inside a bubble where she can breathe without leaves, and Rit asks where the air comes from. Fraud recalls the herbal balloon that lets her breathe underwater. The hero asks how the plants on Fruz affected her brain activity and says she wants to run a study, noting this is the second time today. Rit asks what the nearby creatures are saying. She replies that the creatures are guiding them and telling them to come here. The girl says the creatures are asking for help. The heroes recalled that when the world tree vanished long ago, the water spirit fell asleep, so they sealed the temple to protect Undine. The hero thanks her for her excellent translation and says they are already very deep, adding that without Kelpie in the bubbles they could not have reached this place. The heroes take in the vast, beautiful surroundings and the immense scale of the architecture. The characters are not a grand hall with majestic architecture bathed in soft light. Rit says this place is empty. Manhwa says they must take notes while on land, and Rit asks about Frau. The hero realizes that Nabi has lost control. The World Tree's blessing is now active. The Rit repeats more quickly. The hero and Frau stand beside the fisherman. Rit notices the creature's translucent blue skin, fish fin-shaped ears, and a dress that sways like water. He points to an unseen object, the spirit of water. The hero recounts Undine's awakening. Noticing the creatures bowing in the Japanese style, the heroine says they are very happy. Surprised, the hero watches as the girl appears before him. Undine calls a creature's arrogant children children of men, and says they are stupid seeds that will never sprout. She blames the heroes for killing their sacred tree and disturbing her sweet sleep. The heroes notice she is furious. Rit calls Undine and points out where the action is. The hero realizes magic created a water cutter that could kill him. The redhead had felt this way for a long time. Undying accuses the hero of trying to tarnish the world's sacred secrets and expresses displeasure. Rin sees that his words have angered the woman. He is sure he knows how to solve the situation, and Nabi asks the master to focus. Brow asks Mr. Rita to open the door while Manhwa says that if she must die, she should die drunk. Proudly, the girl explains that the wine came from berries the whole village gathered despite the dry soil and little water. The hero draws on a middle manager's skill by listening closely to the customers' complaints and asking them to tell their story. The heroes sit at a table covered with many dishes of food. Undine, the water spirit, says her anger will not calm even after a long sleep, and blames the heroes for causing her to fall asleep. The hero looks worried and apologizes for what happened. Manhwa also notices that Rin and Undine are chatting non-stop. Frau asks if she did everything correctly, and Rit thanks her for saving her. As Rit entertained the Undine, Frau returned from the village with a fresh batch of wine and snacks. Undine admires the wine's amazing taste. Rit is happy they are able to please the water spirit. The young man suggests trying dishes made in their village to highlight local traditions. Undine says it brought back memories. She recalls the old days when the world was full of magic, and they gathered to share stories over a cup of wine. Undine notes that the creatures they interacted with had no pauses, absorbed all natural mana, and then suddenly disappeared. The heroine says sadly that when the world tree dried up, the world lost its colors. Rit wondered whether people were responsible for their own problems. In the end, the hero realizes all worlds are the same. Undine confirms there is almost no natural mana left to cast spells. She admits Rit still managed to block her attack even though the temple had no mana. The hero explains modern magic doesn't need natural mana and can use the mana stored in the body. Undine says offerings and aid from a mighty warrior are a common human tactic and asks what is expected of her. The heroine asks why someone woke her. Rit says they need water and the drought will continue while she sleeps. Refusing to help, Undine says she has no reason to aid those who destroyed the world. Fraud tells Andean that Mr. Ritz rescued them from the flower people. Their efforts have produced delicious products, she says. Natural mana is essential to spirits like Undine, the girl explains, just as air is to humans. Knowing this, the heroine warns that without natural magic they are doomed to extinction. Undine blames humans for destroying the world tree. After everything the people have done, expecting her to listen to their request is mockery to Undine. Undine accuses the heroes of rebuilding the world to suit their own desires and calls them vile monsters. The hero admits he understands everything, agrees what happened was wrong, and says that's why he left the Empire. Proud turns to Undine and insists that everything is not as she thinks and that Mr. Rit is Mr. Rit. Undine warns that sooner or later people will kill them, so if they want to hate someone, it is better to hate people. Rit says he is driven only by ambition. He confesses he is a vile monster. Undine warns that one more word will make her cut off her interlocutor's head. Trapped by tentacles, the hero struggles to speak. Wanting to research magic and plants, he explained that he planned to live alone. On the southern continent, the hero admits his desires changed. He says their desires align with the Undine's. Rit asks if they should join forces. The hero says that if Undine helps with the water, he can restore the place to its former beauty. Undine wonders what a tiny creature like him can do. According to her, the world tree no longer exists. Rit says the world tree stands in their village, and life blooms all around it. Surprised to learn the world tree is in human hands, she says she does not believe it. Even the hero does not fully understand the situation, and Nabi offers to share the details with her. Rit feels the water is warm. When the girl asks the hero his name, he says he is Rit Ricard. Undine says she'll share her power only once. The heroes thank her for helping. To the hero's surprise, the power would last only 100 years. Undine says that 100 years is only a moment to her, but for humans it spans several generations. The man feels he must suggest releasing a torrent of water, but Undine says nothing can be done right now. The hero asks whether filling the dry land with water would let trees start to grow, but they would be flooded. Undine says plant roots loosen the soil, letting water soak in more easily. She prefers making changes slowly so the environment can adapt, and says the place will come back to life in 100 years. Rith says they must act now because he promised. Undine admits she lacks a natural way of behaving. The hero has an idea he must discuss with everyone. Manhwa insists they cannot plant trees across the whole mountain at once, but they must do it. Mia says everything will work out, and is confident Mr. Rit will help them again. Manhwa says she still believes in him, and today is an important day for her wine. The hero calls to Undine and asks her to wake up. Undine says she still can't sense natural mana and notices the place has changed. The hero apologizes to the creature and promises they will be able to swim soon. The heroine says the world can be restored if the world tree is reborn and advises waiting. Undine offers a day's help to show gratitude for the wine and suggests we start. Rit thanks her and says that's enough for him. The hero vows firmly to keep his promise. Undine says she wasn't expecting this. Rain magic is now active. The hero asks Nabi for help, and she confirms she understood his request. Rapid plant development demonstrates accelerated growth. As expected, the effect was minimal and only a couple of trees grew. The hero notices someone has arrived, surprised by what is happening. Seedlings are starting to sprout all over the mountain, he points out. The girl wonders how the hero managed it. Rit explains he used air magic, but his power cannot do everything. He says he channels the power to make them grow faster so they can control the trees and keep them from getting too big. The girl asks how the flower people can use magic. The hero notices the creatures did not understand their words. Naturally, flower people get along well with plants. He says they actually communicate with the creatures. Rit explains that Manhwa's research identified the best seeds for the mountain, and that Mia bought those seeds. Nuchi carried the seeds and gave the signal, showing how the village of Togan worked together toward a common goal. The heroine watches happily as the plants begin to grow. Grateful, the hero says he couldn't have done it alone. The girl insists this is impossible without the world tree's magic. Unda notices the pleasant scent of greenery and says the breeze feels refreshing. She says they are not finished yet and turns to Raturi Kart, who stresses that this is just the beginning. The title Benefactor of the World Tree has been activated. The hero asks Undine to lend her power to him. He says he has made his choice. Understanding the situation, she agrees to help. During a major magical reaction, the Undine transforms. The hero announces the preparation is complete and is ready to see the result of their actions. Water that carries the world tree's will. A violent burst of water surges forward, a picturesque forest filled with trees. Happily, the heroine says that everything worked out. Proud thanks Undine for her help. Rit says that's enough, demands the hero be quiet, and insists she knows more about this land than anyone else. The world trees call, where heroes celebrate in the river. She remembers the old days. Pharaoh plans to thank Mr. Rita. The hero asks Frau to take his hand. Rit says his body moved on its own and he apologizes for what happened. He says happily that their plan worked because of their teamwork. Fowl says Rit is more than just Rit, and he believes it is teamwork. Admiring the hero, the heroine calls him Mr. Rit and says he saved them. The hero refuses. He admits he has always found people disgusting. Rit explains he became a hero to set himself apart. The hero only recently noticed his mistakes, and now realizes he missed many details. Now he realizes he should have said and done much more. Admitting he threw away everything he owned, the hero chose to live alone among the beautiful plants, a decision he calls stupid, selfish, and disgusting. Rit says he is the most ordinary and despicable person. Fruz says she cannot understand him, but she believes the hero is a good man. The hero recalls the moment the girl took his hand, and it helped him understand himself more clearly. Finally, he accepts himself as he is, just Rip. Rit adds she does not want to be called master and says he wants them to be equal. Apologizing for interrupting their conversation, the girl notices a waterfall ahead. Rit asks why Fraud did not tell him sooner, and she apologizes that she did not want to interrupt him. The hero explains they cannot control the raft, so they have to jump. Fishermen help the heroes cope. The heroine notices Mr. Rit looks strange. Rit says the flower pillow is a good idea. The hero asks Frau if she is all right. Frau thanks Rita for becoming her friend. Rit agrees and confirms they are friends. He thanks Frau for her help. The heroine calls Rita and reminds her they are nearing the village and this is no time for games. The hero announces cheerfully that everything went to plan, but the girls notice something odd about the world tree. She sees the tree has grown a full meter. The heroine turns toward Rita and later toward her father.